Chapter 211. Compared to the mystic gold sand I bought last time, which one is better? Yuchencho asked. Mystic gold sand? Wu Sihai laughed. The two are not on the same level at all. Mystic gold sand can at most be used to refine treasures, while nether iron can be used to refine spiritual treasures. Which one do you think is better? Of course, no matter how good the item is, it needs the skill to refine it. This nether iron has the innate ability to absorb souls. The corpse sect of the demonic Tao has a magic weapon made of nether iron. They have captured many rogue cultivators and absorbed their souls. Those rogue cultivators are like walking corpses, which is why they are ranked third in the demonic Tao. So that's how it is. Yuchencho muttered. Then the next time I meet Ghost General, I will ask him to help me get more nether iron. Although his voice was low, they all looked at each other. It seemed that this guy's relationship with Ghost General was not ordinary. Wu Sihai coughed and said, Yuchencho, can I discuss something with you? Here it comes. The old fox is finally showing his tail. Yuchencho sneered in his heart, but nodded on the surface and said, Just say it, old master. Since both demons and ghosts in the demon region have to show some respect when they see this token, and it is useless to keep it with you, why don't you lend it to the four families first? We will return it to you after we find the old ancestor. We will definitely thank you after that. What do you think? Wu Sihai said a little unnaturally. After a long time they finally got to the point. Bai Zitsong and the other three turned their heads to the side as if nothing had happened. In fact, if you paid attention you could see that they were a little embarrassed. Old master, that's a good idea. Yuchencho took the token from his hand and threw it directly into the storage bag. He smiled and said, It's not that I don't want to lend it to you, but this token is useful to me, but it is useless to you. Wu Sihai watched helplessly as the Ghost King token was taken away. He even had the urge to snatch it back. Suppressing his emotions, he frowned and asked, Why do you say that? When Meng Yan gave me the token, he told me again and again not to give it to anyone else. If the four great clans go to the Demon Ghost region and flash the Ghost King token, I believe it won't take long for Meng Yan to find out. Once he finds out that the token is in your hands, he believed that Meng Yan's hundreds of thousands of troops were not just for show. At that time, in a fit of rage, Meng Yan has many experts under him. If old master thinks that the four great families can fight against Ghost General, I can let you try. What I'm afraid of is that this token won't be of any help to you. It would be bad if you end up attracting even more trouble. That fellow Meng Yan's temper wasn't good. There was also the Demon King Aoli who shared the same roots as him. Old master, I advise you to give up on this idea. Yuchencho shook his head and smiled. Wu Sihai was a little dumbfounded. He had calculated for a long time and thought that he was close. Who knew that his dream would be destroyed by Yuchencho? After a while he pretended to be nonchalant and asked, Who is the Demon King Aoli? One of the 10 great demon kings? Is his relationship with Ghost General good? Yuchencho nodded and said, Yes. He is one of the 10 great demon kings. He is the lord of a territory with Ghost General. The two of them are like brothers. One is in charge of Yang and the other is in charge of Yin. Ma Jiogu of supporting Immortal Island was defeated by him. Even Ma Jiogu of supporting Immortal Island, who is in the late tribulation passing stage, is no match for Demon King Aoli. Wu Sihai could no longer pretend and his face twitched. It should be known that Ma Jiogu was the #1 expert not only in supporting Immortal Island, but also in the entire Chinese cultivation world. Her Demon Slayer wand was rarely matched. Unexpectedly, she was defeated by a demon king who is also in the late tribulation passing stage. The 10 great demon kings of the devil domain were indeed worthy of their reputation. Wu Sihai sighed softly and looked a little dispirited. One Ghost General was already difficult to deal with. Now there was Demon King Aoli and there were many Ghost King and Demon Kings. It seemed that even if he knew the whereabouts of the ancestor, it would be difficult to meet him again. Seeing him in a daze, Yuchencho laughed inwardly, but he still put on a serious face and said, Old master, you don't need to be discouraged. If you really want to go, at worst I'll accompany your 4 great families to the demon realm after I finish my business. Wu Sihai's eyes lit up and said, Are you serious? What do you mean by serious? Yuchencho sneered and pointed at Bai Zitsong's group of 4. He said, I only made this trip because of my 4 brothers. Do you think I have nothing better to do after eating my fill? Bai Zitsong and the other 3 were delighted. They exchanged glances and cupped their fists to thank him. Wu Sihai said happily, What do you want to do? Our 4 families may not be comparable to supporting Immortal Island, but we have some ability. Do you need our help? Sure. Yuchencho touched his nose and said seriously, Using the 4 families is making a mountain out of a molehill. It's enough with your Wu family's help. Old master, can you help me ask Yan Zhuixing of 100 Flower Palace where he got the 4 treasures of Xiaoshui? Wu Sihai's smile froze on his face. After a while he said awkwardly, it's not convenient for my Wu family to take action. Is there anything else that you need my Wu family's help with? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand indifferently and said, forget it. I'll look for you when I have something else. Just don't shirk it again. Hee hee. I'll help as long as I can. Wu Sihai smiled awkwardly. He felt that something was wrong no matter how he thought about it. It felt like he was being schemed against by Yu Qianqiu. Then I hope that the next time I ask for your help will be within your scope. Yu Qianqiu's tone sounded like he didn't have any hope for the Wu family. The more they talked about it, the more embarrassed Wu Sihai felt. He immediately changed the topic and said, why do you want to know where the 4 treasures came from? Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and didn't hide anything. He said in a deep voice, there's a demon clan in the extreme north called the Snow Fox clan. Xiaoshui, who followed the divine craftsman in ancient times, was the first clan leader of the Snow Fox clan. The 4 treasures that the divine craftsman refined are the tokens of the Snow Fox clan's clan leader. I want to know how the treasures of the Snow Fox clan ended up in Yan Zhuixing's hands. Xiaoshui is from the demon clan? Wu Sihai was surprised. Bai Zicong and the other 3 looked at each other. Bai Zicong then asked, the extreme north should be out of the Huaxia Empire's territory. How do you know about it? I just heard about it. I was once entrusted by someone and nearly forgot about it. I only recalled it last night and came to ask you about it. Yu Qianqiu casually said a few words and cupped his hands. Let's not talk anymore. I will make a trip back to the 100 Flowers Valley first. I will come back to discuss with the 4 major clans about the trip to the demon region. Wait. I have something to tell you. Wu Sihai stopped Jiang Yi and hesitated for a moment before speaking. My Wu clan already knows about the Yu clan's matter in Swallow Zicheng. I believe the other factions will know soon too. I believe the supporting Immortal Island won't be an exception. There's also on Kwangsung. I reckon they won't let you off so easily. You better be careful. Chapter 212. There was a short moment of silence in the secret room. Apart from the Wu clan's grandfather-grandson duo and Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zicong and the others were confused and didn't know what kind of riddle they were playing. Yu Qianqiu's thoughts were spinning rapidly. Even the Wu clan knew about his background, and the supporting Immortal Island naturally wouldn't be able to hide it from them. He sneered and said that Lu Changqing was courting death. He actually dared to extend his claws to my clansmen in the secular world. If I don't kill him, should I let him off? If it's a blessing, it won't be a calamity, and if it's a calamity, it can't be avoided. I hope that An Kwangsung knows his place and doesn't provoke me again. If he angers me, I will remove An Kwangsung's name from the cultivation world. His words contained traces of chilling intent, and everyone quivered. Bai Zicong, Tan Fei and Jing Zhuo looked at one another in dismay. An Kwangsung's patriarch, Lu Changqing, was actually killed by him. They sighed silently and weren't worried about Yu Qianqiu. Instead they were worried for An Kwangsung. An Kwangsung's patriarch was killed, and he definitely wouldn't let Yu Qianqiu off. However, this fellow's background was truly unfathomable. Could An Kwangsung win against him? My Wu clan will send a few people to escort you to the 100 Flower Palace. Wu Sihai frowned and said. He was worried that if something happened to Yu Qianqiu, his 4 major clans' trip to the Demon Ghost region would be ruined. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, no need. An Kwangsung can't do anything to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stay in the cultivation world. Seeing that he was stubborn, they didn't say anything else and walked out of the secret room. When they walked to the entrance of the main hall, a Wu clan's disciple suddenly ran over and reported, Clan head, Elder Dongfang Chang'ao of Supporting Immortal Island wants us to pass a message to Supporting Immortal Island's disciple Yu Qianqiu, asking him to return to Supporting Immortal Island's shop. Got it. Wu Sihai waved his hand and the disciple retreated. After confirming that Yu Qianqiu wanted to go back immediately, he cast a spell to the guards on the nearby tower, asking Wu Liqing and the other 3 to lead Yu Qianqiu and fly out on their flying swords. When the 5 of them arrived at Supporting Immortal Island's shop, Wan Yuan was waiting at the entrance, and he immediately brought them to the back of the shop. Dongfang Chang'ao was standing in the courtyard with his hands behind his back, and there were 2 other elders who came with him on both sides. Yu Qianqiu quickly bowed to the 3 of them, and Bai Zicong and the other 3 bowed in turn and said, the four major clans by Zizong, Tanfei, Jingzhua, and Wu Liqing greet the three seniors. An elder at the side took out a flying artifact that looked like a small boat, and Yu Qianshou obediently jumped onto it under everyone's gaze. After Dongfang Chang'ao and the other two got on the boat, the small boat turned into a stream of light and flew away, leaving the people in the courtyard to send them off. Riding the wind, breaking through the clouds, they flew across the sky. Yu Qianshou sat alone at the end, thinking about how to explain when he got back. An Kuangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu came to supporting Immortal Island. Needless to say, Lu Changqing's matter was exposed. So, looks like the matter of finding Yan Zhuoxing will have to be postponed. When they returned to supporting Immortal Island, the small boat directly landed in front of Penglai Pavilion and they got off. Dongfang Chang'ao led him upstairs and the other two didn't follow. They didn't go to the sect master's room, but to a large room that was used to receive guests. As soon as they entered, Yu Qianshou realized that the atmosphere inside was a little strange, and he secretly thought that something was wrong. After Dongfang Chang'ao reported to the sect master, he also bowed to everyone. When he retreated to the side, the room was full of familiar people, including Master Guan Weiwu and Ferdinand. The two of them looked at him with a strange expression, but he didn't see a tall, white-haired old man in a green robe. He was standing beside sect master Feng Xiangtian, sizing him up. He must be An Kuangsung's old ancestor Qing Nu. Feng Xiangtian frowned and said, "Yu Qianshou, do you know your mistake?" "I know my mistake." Yu Qianshou hurriedly bowed. Everyone in the room was stunned, but they heard him say, "Disciple shouldn't have caused trouble outside and brought trouble to the sect. Sect master, please give disciple another chance. Disciple will definitely change for the better." "So, did you really kill An Kuangsung sect master Lu Changqing?" Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice. Dongfang Chang'ao was shocked. He suspected that Yu Qianshou had caused trouble again, but he didn't expect that he killed An Kuangsung sect master. How was that possible? "I killed An Kuangsung sect master?" Yu Qianshou was stunned and he said after a long time, "Sect master, did I hear it wrong? Did you say that I killed An Kuangsung sect master?" "Isn't that so?" Feng Xiangtian scoffed. "The matter has been investigated clearly and you still want to quibble? Sect master, you must be mistaken. How could I kill An Kuangsung sect master?" Yu Qianshou argued. Chapter 213. Feng Xiangtian said in a deep voice, "Looks like you're going to resist till the end and refuse to admit it?" Yu Qianshou stood there with a wronged look and didn't say a word. It was as if he didn't do it. How could he admit it? "You were originally a disciple of An Kuangsung. Why did you join Fuxian Island?" What are your intentions?" Feng Xiangtian shouted. Although he said that, he couldn't bear it in his heart. Such a rare and good seedling was going to be destroyed here. Damn it. I'm exposed. Yu Qianshou didn't reply to him. Instead he turned around and bowed deeply to Guan Weiwu. With a distressed expression he said, "This disciple was originally a commoner in the mortal world. My family was quite wealthy, and I originally wanted to live a carefree life. Fortunately, my ancestors saved An Kuangsung sect master Lu Changqing. In order to repay the kindness, Lu Changqing brought me to An Kuangsung to cultivate even though I didn't have a spiritual root to cultivate. Then I became master and disciple with sect master Hao Sansi. Under the encouragement of my master, this disciple concentrated on training day and night, not daring to slack off for even a day. Perhaps it was heaven rewarding the diligent. I was a disciple of the Azure Light sect who had no spiritual roots and was humiliated by my fellow disciples. One day I was enlightened and stepped into the refining chi stage. This should have been a happy event, but who would have thought that my master would warn me not to reveal a bit of my cultivation in front of others? At that time this disciple didn't understand. Later, because my master was attacked and died, I was so angry that I exchanged a palm strike with the head's grandson Lu Zhengguang and revealed my cultivation. Afterwards, I understood why my master repeatedly warned me not to reveal my cultivation." Yu Qianshou looked at everyone and bowed to Guan Weiwu again. "Sect master, Lu Changqing kept sending elders to ask me to reveal my cultivation secrets. But how could I have any cultivation secrets? I only know how to make up for my lack of cultivation with diligence. Because of this, I was demoted to a spirit stone mine to do hard labor. It was only a day after my master passed away. They couldn't wait any longer. So be it if you have to do hard labor. But the sect leader didn't want to let me go. He sent Elder Lu Wanxian to threaten and bribe me. I almost died in his hands several times, but I didn't know any cultivation secrets. How could I tell him? Then one day the Magic Illusion Palace attacked the Spirit Stone Mine. The dignified elder of the Ong Kwang Tsung, Lu Wanwan, used me as a shield in order to escape. Fortunately, this disciple was lucky enough to survive. Looking at the whole Spirit Stone Mine, I was disheartened and didn't think about cultivation anymore. So, I left quietly, thinking that it was just a nightmare and that I never came to Ong Kwang Tsung. Everyone from the supporting Immortals Island sighed. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu had such a miserable experience. Imagine a disciple without spiritual roots suddenly being able to cultivate. Some sects would indeed use all kinds of means. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu was an exception with extraordinary talent? However, a dignified righteous sect actually did such a thing to their own disciple. Anyone would be disappointed and leave Ong Kwang Tsung just like that. Everyone glanced at the green-robed elder and couldn't help but reveal a trace of disdain. When Qing Nu, who was beside Feng Xiangtian, heard Yu Qianqiu's words, a few of his white beards were already broken. He cupped his hands at everyone and sighed, "I won't hide my shame. I also heard about this matter after the incident. It was indeed those evil disciples who were devoid of conscience and did the wrong thing first. So, let's not talk about the sect's misfortune. How shameful." These words undoubtedly proved that Yu Qianqiu's words were true, and everyone felt even more sympathy for Yu Qianqiu from the bottom of their hearts. Especially the Cultivation Pavilion's principal elder, O Sihai. He thought to himself, Ong Kwang Tsung didn't want such an outstanding disciple. Now that he has entered my Supporting Immortals Island, he is my Supporting Immortals Island's disciple. How dare you, a mere Ong Kwang Tsung, come to my Supporting Immortals Island to ask for him? This is outrageous. He had been thinking about how to get Yu Qianqiu into his cultivation pavilion. Brother Qing, don't blame yourself. Feng Xiangtian calmly comforted him. He faced Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, "Where did you get the Supporting Immortals token from back then?" Yu Qianqiu still didn't answer him directly. Instead, he bowed to Guan Weiwu, causing everyone to frown. He was clearly not putting the sect master in his eyes. Feng Xiangtian was expressionless. The former bowed and said, "After leaving Ong Kwang Tsung, I wandered around. Once, I met an injured Qi refinement stage cultivator who was on the verge of death. Unfortunately, I couldn't save him no matter how hard I tried. Before he died, he said that he was originally a disciple expelled by Supporting Immortals Island. His name was Ji Wushuang. He gave me a token to repay my kindness and said that I could join Supporting Immortals Island with this token. I originally gave up on the idea of cultivating, but when I heard that it was the world's largest sect, I couldn't help but want to give it a try. In the end, I became a disciple of Supporting Immortals Island." Ji Wushuang? Feng Xiangtian frowned. He looked around and asked, "Is there a disciple called Ji Wushuang among the expelled disciples?" O Sihai suddenly sighed and said, "Sect Master Yu Qianqiu is right. There was a disciple who was expelled from the sect called Ji Wushuang. He was a disciple of the Cultivation Pavilion. He was the grandson of the late Elder Ji. His father died in battle for Supporting Immortals Island. I didn't expect. So, Elder Ji's grandson? 3 generations of his grandfather and grandson are all dead?" Feng Xiangtian paused. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Their expressions were a bit sad. The disciples who were expelled from the sect didn't have a good ending. They didn't think that even the grandson of a dignified elder of the Cultivation Pavilion would end up like this. The elders who were able to hold the Immortal Supporting Medallion were all senior elders. Feng Xiangtian came back to his senses and shouted, "Why did you kill Sect Master Ong Kwang Tsung?" "I didn't kill him." Yu Qianqiu kept staring at Guan Weiwu, who felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." Feng Xiangtian snorted. At first he wanted to protect Guan Weiwu. After all, talents were rare. However, Guan Weiwu had repeatedly looked down on him and even dared to deceive him. How could he put his face as the sect master? He was simply courting death. Feng Xiangtian shouted towards the outside, "Bring him in." 2 disciples pushed a person in. As soon as the person came in, he immediately knelt down and kowtowed to everyone. Trembling, he said, Great Immortals, Great Immortals." Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at that person. He only stared at his master, Guan Weiwu. Feng Xiangtian pointed at Yu Qianqiu and shouted to that person, "Come forward. See if he is the person who released those flying swords that night." Yes, yes, yes. That person scrambled over. When he looked back, he immediately cried out in joy, "Eldest young master." Then he nodded to Feng Xiangtian and said, "That night, it was my eldest young master who released those flying swords and fought with the evil person who destroyed my Yu clan." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He looked down and saw that the person looked familiar, but he couldn't remember his name. He then looked at the clothes he was wearing. It was the uniform of the Yu residence's servants. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. What else could he say? Feng Xiangtian said with an expressionless face, Yu Qianqiu, what else do you have to say? Yu Qianqiu didn't answer. He looked at Guan Weiwu and said with a faint smile, Master, could it be that you have nothing to say? When he said that, his heart turned cold. He said those words to Guan Weiwu because he wanted to tell Guan Weiwu about his difficulties and hoped that Master could understand. But as his master, Guan Weiwu actually didn't say a word for him. He didn't have any intention of protecting him. Could it be that the relationship between the two of them was so bad in the past? Since things had come to this, was there a need to stay on Fushin Island? The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face gradually faded. He slowly closed his eyes. Seeing his disciple like this, a look of pain flashed across Guan Weiwu's face. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak for his disciple. In fact, after he knew about this matter, he immediately went to find his senior brother, hoping that his senior brother would show mercy. But the latter immediately scolded him, saying that this matter involved other sects, and whether it was fair or not was related to the reputation of Fushin Island. He sternly warned him that as Yu Qianqiu's master, he shouldn't intervene in this matter. He knew how to deal with it. Ferdinand was also warned. Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes. His face was full of coldness. Suddenly he knelt down in front of Guan Weiwu and kowtowed 3 times in a row. After standing up, he brushed the hem of his gown with one hand and pulled it with both hands. With a hiss sound, the front hem of the gown was torn off on the spot. He pinched it with one hand and slowly raised it towards everyone. Everyone was stunned. They didn't know what he meant. He raised the torn hem of the gown and shouted in a deep voice, Master, once this gown is torn, you and I are no longer friends. We don't owe each other anything. From now on, I, Yu Qianqiu, have nothing to do with Fushin Island. From now on, I, Yu Qianqiu, am free to fly in the sky and fish in the sea. No one can control me, Yu Qianqiu. They couldn't afford to offend them, but they had to deal with it. However, from what happened just now, if supporting Immortal Island wasn't deliberately putting on a show, then this matter really had nothing to do with supporting Immortal Island. Qingnu thought about it again and again. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, is my An Kuangtsung sect's treasure, the Green Destiny Sword, in your hands? If it's in your hands, you should return it to me. Return what? It was destroyed along with that broken horsetail whisk. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, even if the 2 treasures weren't destroyed, do you think I would return them to you? The dignified sect leader An Kuangtsung actually tried to kill my family members in the secular world. Moreover, they were the descendants of his savior. Only you people would do such a thing. Now you still have the cheek to ask me for the Green Destiny Sword? Is there something wrong with your brain? Everyone was speechless. This Yu Qianqiu didn't even care about old ancestor Qingnu, who was famous in the cultivation world. He was really arrogant. It seemed like it wasn't strange that he could continuously beat people up. What? The Green Destiny Sword was destroyed? Qingnu's expression was a little twitching. She had seen the horsetail whisk that was destroyed, so she was afraid that he was telling the truth. Suppressing the anger in her heart, Qingnu said in a deep voice, I, An Kuangtsung, let you down first. Logically, I shouldn't pursue this matter. However, you killed my An Kuangtsung sect leader. Whether you are willing or not, I will imprison you in An Kuangtsung for 100 years. Also, who are those black-clothed people? You want to imprison me for 100 years? Dream on. Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. Qingnu hadn't been humiliated like this for many years. She immediately had the intention to fight. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at her and smiled. Wait. If he had anything to ask or to fight, he would have to leave the supporting Immortal Island first. We aren't people of supporting Immortal Island. Fighting in their territory is not giving them face. All right. As you wish. Qingnu was really angry. This kid was too arrogant. If she didn't teach him a lesson, she would be letting herself down. She immediately cupped her fists at Feng Xiangtian and said, Sect leader Feng, please open the island's protective array and let us out. Feng Xiangtian nodded and flicked a white light out of the window. That white light flew into the sky. Old man, come out and reason with me. Yu Qianqiu shouted at Qingnu. He jumped out of the window and did a somersault in the air. The sword on his back was unsheathed and drew a semicircle, carrying him into the sky. Sect leader Feng, sorry to disturb you. Qingnu cupped her fists and flew out of the window. It looked huge, but it was very dexterous in her hand. Hoo! The huge sword directly stirred the clouds. As her hand moved faster and faster, the whole white cloud was stirred up like a tornado, and gradually dissipated in the air. Until all the white clouds disappeared without a trace, Qing Nu put away the sword in her hand and threw it back into the storage bag. But in front of her there was no one. Obviously she was restrained. Lan Bingxue looked at the face that was even more beautiful than hers, and her expression was indescribable. After the banquet was over, Ferdinand angrily returned and greeted Ma Zhougu. Zhougu. There was quite a commotion above supporting Immortal Island just now. What? Could it be that Qing Nu, that old fellow, had made a move on Yu Qianqiu? What happened? Ma Zhougu turned around and asked. Hibiscus, who couldn't move, looked at her father anxiously. Yu Qianqiu. That brat was a bit impulsive. At first, the sect leader didn't plan to do anything to him. He just wanted to put on a show in front of Qing Nu, who knew that when he saw that his master didn't say anything to help him, he actually cut ties with Guan Weiwu in front of everyone. Their master-disciple relationship ended there. The sect leader was also angry and expelled him from the supporting Immortal Island in public. It's funny that Qing Nu chased Yu Qianqiu to the outside of the supporting Immortal Island. In the end, with Qing Nu's cultivation of the final phase of nature's test, she couldn't catch Yu Qianqiu and let him escape. I really don't know how that brat has such ability. It's really incredible. Ferdinand shook his head and smiled bitterly. That old fellow Qing Nu didn't catch Yu Qianqiu? Ma Zhougu was stunned. Lan Bingxue was also shocked. Hearing this, Hibiscus, who had tears in her eyes, immediately relaxed. Her large eyes flickered. Others might not know, but she knew that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. It was normal that others couldn't catch him. He escaped, but from now on he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Without the protection of supporting Immortal Island, the Luo sect and An Kuang-tsung will definitely not let him go. Zhougu, why didn't you come forward to persuade the sect leader? I believe that if you had come forward, this matter wouldn't have escalated to this point, Ferdinand asked. I'm old and a little muddle-headed. I never interfere with the decisions of the supporting Immortal Island. Ma Zhougu turned around and stared at Hibiscus and asked, I heard that your girl's face was cured by Yu Qianqiu? Yes. Ferdinand nodded and said, this disciple will not hide it from you. Yu Qianqiu went to the demon domain and got a lot of spirit grasses. He secretly hid them and didn't hand them over. Instead, he secretly refined a furnace of Rui Dan for Rong. Just like that, Ronger's face was cured. Rui pill? Even Ma Zhougu couldn't help but exclaim, is it the legendary Rui pill that can keep youthful, detoxify, nourish one's face and make one immune to hundreds of poisons? According to Yu Qianqiu, it should be. You didn't see the appearance of the Rui pill at that time. Not only did it give off a pill halo, but it also emitted 7 colored rays of light. It was the first time in my life that I saw such a pill. It was an eye-opener. Ferdinand sighed. Hearing this, Lan Bingxue looked at Hibiscus with an envious expression. Which woman didn't want to stay youthful? Your girl is so lucky. If I had encountered such a pill in the past, I wouldn't have gotten the name Ma Zhougu. Last Lan, let's go. Let's not look at it lest we get envious. Let's go. Let's go. Ma Zhougu shook her head and sighed. She slowly walked out with Lan Bingxue's help. When Yu Qianqiu was being chased by Qing Nu and was about to enter the cloud, he was scared out of his wits when he looked back. The other party actually teleported in front of him. As soon as he entered the cloud, he immediately flashed back to Utopia without saying anything. He didn't dare to be long-winded. A cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage was simply too terrifying for him. The reason why he disappeared into the cloud was that he didn't want to expose the secret that he could disappear into thin air. Who knew that he would almost be killed? After appearing in Bai Sujin's room in the Misty Palace, he finally felt safe. He breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Bai Sujin suddenly looked back. Seeing him like this, she walked up to him and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" "Damn it. I'm so unlucky today. I was just expelled from the supporting Immortals Island, and now I'm being chased by a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage by An Kuang-tsung. Just a little bit more. If he had killed me before I could react, I might not have been able to come back. I was so scared." Yu Qianqiu said in a relaxed manner after the fright. "You were expelled from the supporting Immortals Island? Why would a cultivator from An Kuang-tsung want to kill you? Is it because you helped me investigate the 4 treasures? Bai Sujin grabbed his arm. Especially when she saw the long hem of his robe. He was naked behind his buttocks and his legs were exposed in front. Who knew what kind of danger he had encountered? Yu Qianqiu gently pressed her hand and said with a smile, "Sister, don't think too much. It's not your fault. It's my fault." Bai Sujin, on the other hand, didn't think so. She only thought that he was comforting her. She bit her lips and said, "I can take my time with my matters. You must pay attention to your safety outside." In her heart, there was nothing more important than Yu Qianqiu's safety. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid it's too late now. I believe it won't take long for the whole cultivation world to know that I was expelled from the supporting Immortals Island. At that time, I'm afraid that the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangtsung will cast their net to find me. It's not convenient for me to show myself in public for a while." "Then you shouldn't go out during this period of time." Bai Sujin's peerless features gently lifted as she looked at him worriedly. Yu Qianqiu was a little dazed. He had the urge to hug and kiss her. Just when he was thinking about it, his divine sense suddenly fluctuated. Someone was looking for him. Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "It's news from the Pillar of General's office. Could it be that there's an improvement in the mission that I gave to little Tian? Sister, I have something to do. I'll go out for a while." As soon as he finished speaking, he took off his long robe and put it on. Then he disappeared without a trace. Bai Sujin bent down to pick up the torn clothes on the ground and held them in her hands. Her pretty face was filled with worry. Chapter 216. The rear garden of the National Pillar's mansion had become a forbidden area. Actually, there was nothing they could do about it. At this time there were many people in the rear garden. There were adults and children, and all of them were dressed shabbily. None of them were presentable, and they all looked at the surrounding courtyard with fear. No one dared to make a sound, and there were probably more than 100 people. These people were brought here by Ling Feng and the others while they were cultivating in the capital. Nowadays, the three of them could be said to be living a comfortable life. They cultivated in peace, and with the nourishment of spirit stones and spirit pills, their cultivation was rising rapidly. In the past, it was something they didn't even dare to think about. They didn't have to worry about food and drink, and there was no one to restrict them. They also had the money Shi Xiaotian gave them to spend. Although they couldn't normally appear in the general's mansion, they would climb over the wall and stroll around the capital when they were free. The three of them did not dare to neglect the task that Yu Qianqiu had entrusted them with. The purpose of their stroll was to find people with spirit roots for cultivation. Shi Xiaotian looked at the group of people in the rear garden and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of people did Ling Feng and the others bring here? Most of them looked like beggars, or they looked like they were in dire straits. Some of them had eaten their fill and were squatting in the shade of a tree, scratching lice. On the wall of the small courtyard, Ling Feng and the others sat side by side, while Shi Xiaotian stood on it. The four of them looked at the group of people in the garden. Shi Xiaotian smiled bitterly and said, "Ling Feng, did you bring all the beggars in the capital here?" Beizi looked up at him and smiled. "If the three of us really brought all the beggars in the capital here, even 10 of your general's mansions wouldn't be able to accommodate them, let alone this garden. We also want to bring some decent people for boss, but boss already told us to keep a low profile. If we brought so many ordinary people here, I'm afraid that the government would have long been alerted and people would have noticed. Look at these beggars and vagrants, they don't have families and they're all alone. Without them, no one in the capital would know." Shi Xiaotian waved his finger and said, "But look, why did you bring even old men here? What does boss want them for?" "That's good. At least they won't starve to death on the streets." It was rare for Xian Ping to say such a long sentence. Ling Feng nodded and said, "Boss said that as long as they don't belong to any sect and have spiritual roots, regardless of age, the more the better. So, let's wait for the boss to get here first." Shi Xiaotian shook his head and raised a small silver ball in his hand. He asked doubtfully, "I just used my divine sense to check inside and found that it's empty. Can this really summon boss?" "It should be possible. Otherwise, boss wouldn't have given this to us for no reason," Ling Feng said. Shi Xiaotian looked at the silver ball in his hand and smiled bitterly. "I hope boss can take them away as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be hundreds of people eating every day." "What? Your Grand General's residence can't even support 100 people?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared on top of the wall and laughed. "Boss." The few of them turned around and exclaimed in surprise. After Shi Xiaotian's joy, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Boss, that's not what I meant. It's just that my father is about to return to the imperial court. I'm afraid it will arouse my father's suspicion. I don't know how to explain it to him." Yu Qianqiu looked at the hundreds of people and nodded slightly. They were all people with spiritual roots. He didn't expect Ling Feng and the other two to be able to gather so many people in such a short period of time. However, he was stunned when he saw a few old people among them. Let's talk inside. Yu Qianqiu directly entered the courtyard from the top of the wall. After the four of them entered the main hall, Yu Qianqiu sat on a chair in the main hall and asked curiously, "The pillar of the state general has been fighting at the borders for many years. Why is he suddenly returning to the imperial court?" Shi Xiaotian smiled and said, "It's nothing. The Pingwu general has two beautiful daughters. The eldest is going to marry the current crown prince, and the second is going to marry the eldest son of the Weigwu general. My father, the Pingwu general, and the Weigwu general are the three great generals of the empire. Maybe it's because of this that my father has to come personally to congratulate them." An important official with an important official, and an important official with the crown prince? Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched. He seemed to feel that something wasn't right. He frowned and said, "Xiaonan, among the three great generals of the empire, who has the greatest military power? It's not a matter of who has the greatest military power. The three great generals control 6 million soldiers and horses, and there isn't much of a difference in power. If we're talking about military power, I'm afraid it's still my father," Shi Xiaotian said with a hint of pride. "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian raised his hand and gestured. "The south of the Huaxia Empire is a barren land that is rarely visited by humans. In the words of our cultivation world, it's called the demonic domain. The east side, Linhai, has always been guarded by the troops of the Weigwu general. The Pingwu general's troops are mainly guarding the capital region, as well as the northern border. My father, the pillar of the state general, is guarding the west. The east side, Linhai, has no neighbors. The south is barren, and although it's dangerous, there are no wars. Although there's a big country in the north, they're located in a bitter cold land. In terms of strength, they can't compare to our empire. Only the west that my father guards is not only vast, but it's also connected to the 6 countries. Ever since our empire was founded, the 6 countries have never stopped having conflicts, big or small. Think about it, boss. For so many years, the troops in the east, south, and north have been preparing for war all year round. On the other hand, the west that my father guards is always preparing for war. Therefore, among the 3 great generals of the empire, my father's troops are the strongest." "Oh, so that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu had always been in the cultivation world, so he really didn't know much about these things. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Then what about the defense of the west when your father returns to the capital? Isn't he worried at all?" "Ah, boss, you don't know." Shi Xiaotian laughed. "Last year, the 6 countries attacked our empire together, instantly angering my father. My father immediately issued a death order. With a single command, his 2 million troops split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries one by one, causing them to suffer great losses. In the end, the 6 countries sued for peace. At the beginning of this year, they signed an inviolable treaty with our Huaxia Empire. That's why my father can return to the capital with peace of mind. As for the defense of the West, my father has already handed it over to my second brother. Second brother has grown up under my father's guidance. I believe that it won't be a problem for him to guard the West." "Oh, that means that there's no war in the West for now?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Shi Xiaotian laughed. "The 6 countries have suffered great losses. Even if they want to cause trouble, it'll be impossible for them to do so in the next decade or so." Seeing the proud look on Shi Xiaotian's face, Yu Qianqiu didn't ask him anything else. However, in his heart he was grumbling. There was no war at the border, but the Shi family controlled the strongest troops of the Huaxia Empire. A single army was able to defeat the armies of the 6 countries at the same time. One could imagine the battle prowess of this army. Some people probably couldn't sit still anymore. Look, they even brought up the matter of an alliance marriage. Chapter 217. Ling Feng walked over and said, "Boss, I, Beizi, and Xian Ping found the people in the garden. Although they don't have much aptitude, they still have some spiritual roots. I wonder if they can be used?" Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. "It's fine as long as they have spiritual roots. How can there be so many people with good aptitude? Those with good aptitude have already been taken away by the major sections. You guys won't even have the chance to find them. But why did you bring the old man here?" Shi Xiaotian glanced at the 3 of them and laughed in his heart. Ling Feng was startled and said, "Boss, didn't you say it's better to have more people regardless of age?" "Did I say that?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately came to a realization. "Oh, I think I did say that before. Forget it, it's better than nothing." We can bring them back to cultivate and they'll be stronger than ordinary people. With so many people, we'll be worried about our food supply. It's better to bring them back and not do anything else. We can be self-sufficient. By the way, little Tian, when you have time, help me gather some grains and seeds of all kinds of fruits and vegetables. I have great use for them. The three of them didn't know what he was going to do. Shi Xiaotian nodded and agreed. Yu Qianzhou instructed again. Ling Feng, Beizi, and Xian Ping continue to search for people with spiritual roots. I'll still say it. I'll take as many as you can regardless of age. It doesn't matter if your aptitude is lacking, I have a way to solve it. But remember, keep a low profile and don't let the other sects find out. I've been chased out of supporting Immortals Island. Many people want to kill me. This general's residence is my stronghold now. Don't let it be exposed. The three of them looked at each other and Shi Xiaotian asked in surprise, why were you chased out of supporting Immortals Island? My ass. Yu Qianzhou stood up and patted Shi Xiaotian's shoulder. He smiled and said, Xiaotian, I've taken revenge for you and An Kuangceng. The head of An Kuangceng, Lu Changqing, and his grandson Lu Jingguang were both killed by me. They were shocked again. Shi Xiaotian swallowed his saliva and said, Boss, you're not lying to me, right? You killed sect master An Kuangceng? How is this possible? Damn it. Do I look like a liar to you? Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, AI. If I didn't kill him, would I have been expelled from the supporting Immortal Island? Sigh. The days of having someone to back him up were over. From now on he would have to rely on himself. Everyone keep a low profile. They were completely speechless, but they still didn't quite believe it. How could the Righteous Path's 6th-ranked sect leader An Kuangceng be killed so easily? It's good to be expelled from the sect. In the future I can come here whenever I want. Alright, Xiaotian, get me a set of ordinary clothes. Looking at his serious expression, it didn't seem like he was joking. Shi Xiaotian asked tentatively, Boss, you really want to go to 10,000 Flower House? That place is a lively place. Lively? Yu Qianzhou nodded his head seriously and said, I was just saying it casually. Since you want to go, as your follower, I naturally have to accompany you. If you want to go, then hurry up. Let's go. Let's go. Don't waste time. The three were completely speechless. Yu Qianzhou pushed Shi Xiaotian out in a hurry. As he walked, he didn't forget to look back and warn the three who followed him. What are you three doing here? Go do what you need to do. Pillar of State General's residence. Yu Qianzhou had lived here for more than a year, so he was very familiar with the place. In the wealthy and powerful mansion, the two of them walked out of the back garden one after another. The servants who passed by saluted when they saw Shi Xiaotian, but when they saw the servant in new clothes behind him, they all felt that he was very unfamiliar. They all secretly muttered, Why haven't I seen the third young master's servant before? Shi Xiaotian walked confidently in front, while Yu Qianzhou followed behind with his hands behind his back. His aura wasn't any weaker than the former's, but it seemed that his awareness as a servant was a little lacking. When the two of them were about to pass the main hall, a beautiful woman walked out. The two women on her left and right were also quite good-looking. Behind them was a group of servant girls. Shi Xiaotian slowed down and said in a low voice, You know my mother. The two beside her are my eldest sister-in-law and second sister-in-law. They married a few years ago, so you haven't seen them before. The two of them inevitably bumped into each other. Shi Xiaotian bowed and said, Mother. Eldest sister-in-law, second sister-in-law. The servants on the other side also bowed to Shi Xiaotian. Li Hongyang looked at her son lovingly. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the servant behind her son and was slightly startled. Not only did this servant not bow to her, he actually stood there with his hands behind his back. Yu Qianzhou looked at her and nodded with a smile. When Li Hongyang saw who it was, she was immediately shocked. When the woman beside her saw Yu Qianzhou, she frowned and said, Uncle, is this the new retainer? Why isn't he bowing to mother? She immediately turned around and shouted, Housekeeper, who brought this servant? Why doesn't he know the most basic manners of servants? Someone come. Bring him to teach him the rules. Chapter 218. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. Not only him, Li Hongyang and Shi Xiaotian were also dumbfounded. Not far away, a man in his 50s jogged over and repeatedly smiled apologetically at the woman. He shouted at Yu Qianzhou in a low voice, Still not coming with me, Mr. Yu? The housekeeper was Shi Shunqing, a retainer of the general's office. He had met Yu Qianzhou many times in the past, so he was familiar with him. He more or less knew what kind of person Yu Qianzhou was. When he saw Yu Qianqiu's face clearly, he was dumbfounded. Close to 10 years had passed, and his own appearance had already aged. However, Yu Qianqiu still looked the same, just that his appearance had become more mature. He naturally recognized him with a single glance, and was immediately at a loss as to what to do. "Shunqing, this has nothing to do with you. Take all the servants away. I haven't seen my wife for many years, so we have something to talk about." Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. He ordered the housekeeper to leave. Sure, Shunqing nodded repeatedly. After getting Li Hongyang's permission, he took the group of servants away. Seeing that the housekeeper didn't listen to her, the woman was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said, "Does the general's office have any rules? Wansher, don't be rude." Li Hongyang stopped her. The other woman next to her quietly watched everything that happened just now. The servant in front of her was obviously not simple. How could a normal person order the housekeeper of the general's office? "Mother, these servants are getting more and more unruly. If you don't teach them a lesson, they will bully their master in the future. Mother is kind, so you can't be cruel. Why don't you let your wife discipline them instead?" The woman seemed to have lost a nerve in her head and was still chattering. The other woman had already pulled her a few times, but she still didn't notice. "Shut up." Li Hongyang also scolded her wife. In her impression, Yu Qianqiu was like a god. Back then, he just casually drew a path and trapped her eldest son for a few days. How could she offend him? "Damn it. If you continue to nag, I'll sell you to Africa." Yu Qianqiu was speechless when he met such a woman. He pointed at the woman's pretty face and asked Shi Shaoan, "Shaoan, is this your sister-in-law? Is it Shi Youtian's wife or Shi Yingtian's?" Shi Shaotian looked at him with a wry smile and thought to himself, "If you don't wear this servant's clothes, how could you have caused such trouble?" Li Hongyang took over the conversation and introduced awkwardly, "Mr. Please don't be offended. This is Bao Wansher, the wife of my eldest son Yu Tian, and this is Situ Hui, the wife of my second son Yin Tian." "Bao Wansher." Yu Qianqiu sized her up and laughed coldly. "She doesn't live up to her name. Why did Yu Tian choose such a shrew? In my opinion, he should just divorce her." His words were not polite at all. The people at the side were speechless. Shi Shaotian really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bao Wansher was so angry that her face turned pale. She said with a trembling voice, You. Wah." She was so angry that she cried. Yu Qianqiu didn't have a good impression of shrewd-like women. What he said just now was to anger her. Seeing that she was crying, he immediately became interested in watching a good show. He jokingly said, "Cry, continue to cry. It's too soft, louder." Bao Wansher did as he said and began to cry loudly. Her voice was really sharp and she even made a lot of body movements. Situ Hui, who was at the side, tried to comfort her, but it was useless. Li Hongyang felt a headache coming on. Shi Shaotian quickly pulled Yu Qianqiu back and said, "Boss, I'm begging you. Please be lenient with your words. She is my sister-in-law after all. Just give me some face, okay?" "Who made my wife cry?" A voice that pretended to be angry was heard with a hint of laughter. Yu Qianqiu turned to look. A person walked out from the entrance. He wore a scholar's hat and a vermilion official's robe. Who else could it be but the Shi family's boss, Shi Yutian? However, he seemed much more mature than before, especially with the two small tufts of beard on his mouth. Wah. Bao Wansher acted as if she saw her savior. She wiped her tears and rushed into Shi Yotian's arms. She began to complain about all her grievances. "There's such an evil servant. Wansher, don't cry. I'll teach him a lesson for you." Shi Yutian let go of his wife and walked over with large strides. "Ah, interesting." Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. He said, "Shi Yudun, we haven't seen each other for so many years. I didn't think you'd become a flower protector. I'd like to see how you'll teach me a lesson." "How dare you?" After Shi Yutian saw the person's face clearly, the words he was about to shout got stuck in his throat. His face turned red. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly lifted the hem of his official robe and ran over to pay his respects. "Yutian greets Mr. I haven't seen Mr. for many years. You've been well." No matter what their relationship was like in the past, meeting old friends was always a happy thing. Yu Qianqiu supported him and said with a smile, "I don't live as well as you do. Hugging your wife and flirting in public. TSK. What a simple life." "Mister, you must be joking. Yutian only covets some romantic relationships. How can it compare to Mr.'s celestial life? After all these years, Mr. is still as elegant as ever. Yutian really envies you." He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Back then he painstakingly pursued the path of cultivation. In the end, the path was ethereal and he woke up from his dream. He finally gave up and settled down to marry a wife and focus on his career. However, he couldn't help but have a cultivation complex in his heart. He sighed to himself. His third wife was the one he was envious of. He often wanted to chat with his third wife, but it was difficult to see her leave the forbidden area of the back garden. At this moment, Bao Wanshur was no longer crying. She was looking at her husband with her mouth wide open. No matter how stupid she was, she could sense that the servant in front of her was not ordinary. Shi Yutian waved at her and said, "Wanshur, come and greet Mr." Bao Wanshur didn't know where to put her hands. She walked over gracefully and saluted with a flushed face. "Bao Wanshur greets Mr. I was reckless and offended Mr. just now. Please forgive me Mr." Si Tuhui, who was at the side, was very obedient. She didn't need to be reminded and came over to Bao. Si Tuhui greets Mr. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly at Bao Wanshur and ignored her. Instead, he raised his hand at Si Tuhui, indicating that she didn't have to be so polite. He smiled and said, "Are you Yin Tian's wife? I'm old acquaintances with your husband." "What? Husband?" This mister's words were a little rude. Si Tuhui muttered to herself, but she nodded with a smile and retreated to the side. Shi Yutian saw that Yu Qianqiu was ignoring his wife's apology. He immediately gave his third brother a look, asking him to plead for leniency. Shi Xiaotian understood and walked over to pull Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, "Boss, my sister-in-law actually has a good heart. She's just a little outspoken. Don't bother with her." That's right, that's right." Shi Yutian walked over and said, "Yutian apologizes to Mr. on my wife's behalf. I hope that Mr. will forgive my wife this time for my third brother's sake." Actually, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't really bother with an ordinary person like her. However, women sometimes relied on their status and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In order to be less long-winded in the future, he couldn't help but scare her a little. He immediately pointed his finger and shouted, "Bao Wanshur, I'll spare your life this time for the sake of the Shi brothers. If you dare to do this again, I'll definitely take your head. When that time comes, it'll be useless no matter who pleads for mercy. Hurry up and thank Mr." Shi Yutian tugged at his wife. Bao Wanshur felt very wronged. How could she be treated worse than an outsider in her own home? However, she still thanked him honestly. This matter was settled just like that. Bless the heavens. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and sighed, "Xiaotian and I are going to Wanhua brothel. Do you want to join us?" Shi Xiaotian almost vomited blood. He looked at his mother, who was glaring at him, guiltily. Si Tuhui's face was already red. Bao Wanshur's eyes were wide open. Shi Yutian kept smiling foolishly at Yu Qianqiu. This question was very difficult to answer. In fact, he really wanted to go out with Yu Qianqiu. It was not for the fans of Wanhua brothel, but purely for Yu Qianqiu. However, his wife, mother, and sister-in-law were all at the side. How was he supposed to answer? Yu Qianqiu joked, "Are you going or not? Why are you smiling foolishly? Give me an answer." Shi Xiaoyan's expression twitched. "Boss, you just want to see the world in chaos. You're not allowed to go." Bao Wanshur opened her arms and stood in front of Shi Yutian. She glared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Even if you kill me, I won't let him go to that place with you." I didn't know that she was a feminist. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "Yuden, since your wife doesn't want you to go, then forget it. Xiaotian, let's go." With that said, he walked straight out. Shi Xiaotian lowered his head and followed behind as if he was looking for ants. "Hey, Mr. Wait." Shi Yutian was a little anxious. "If you dare to go, I'll fight it out with you." Bao Wanshur jumped onto Shi Yutian and hugged him tightly. She didn't care about her image anymore. Not far away, Yu Qianqiu's laughter could be heard. Si Tuhui's eyes revealed a trace of curiosity. Who was this person? Chapter 219. The speed at which news spread in the cultivation world was very fast. It was much faster than the speed at which a horse could run or a pigeon could carry a message. Once the news of Yu Qianqiu being expelled from the supporting Immortals Island was released, it caused a huge uproar. Of course, an ordinary core formation disciple would not be able to cause such a huge uproar. The main reason was that the things he did had a huge impact. 100 Flowers Valley beat up the grandson of Sect Master Ong Kwangtsung, and Hat Island beat up the son of Deluo Sect Master. This guy seemed to be targeting those with status. Ong Kwangsung announced that sect master Ong Kwangsung and his grandson had been killed by Yu Qianqiu. Ong Kwangsung offered a reward of 1 million high-grade spirit stones to anyone who could provide information about Yu Qianqiu. The reward for taking Yu Qianqiu's head was 5 million high-grade spirit stones, and the reward for capturing Yu Qianqiu alive was 10 million high-grade spirit stones. As soon as the news of the Azure Light sect was released, the entire cultivation world was boiling. A mere core formation disciple killed sect master Ong Kwangsung? It was hard to believe. However, for those from the small sects, 1 million, 5 million, or even 10 million upper spiritual stones were tempting enough for them. Now that Yu Qianqiu didn't have the support of supporting Immortal Island, he was just a core formation cultivator. He was no different from a lowly vagrant cultivator. There was nothing to be afraid of. Therefore they sent out their disciples to investigate. Even if they did not expect to earn 10 million high-grade spirit stones, it would still be good if they could earn 1 million. Those poor rogue cultivators tried their luck everywhere. However, there was a rumor that Ong Kwangsung's ancestor Qing Nu failed to capture Yu Qianqiu when he confronted Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he allowed Yu Qianqiu to escape unscathed. However, after thinking about it, everyone understood that this was pure nonsense. How could a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator fail to capture a core formation cultivator? It was a joke and a rumor. Under Ong Kwangsung's request, the entire cultivation alliance began to operate. All the righteous sects that joined the cultivation alliance would search for Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world. If necessary, they could kill him on the spot. The Luo sect was especially supportive of this. At this moment, in the Wu clan's ancestral hall of the 4 major clans, the clan heads of the 4 major clans gathered together at the fastest speed. After receiving the news from Wu Sihai, the 4 clan heads weren't surprised that Yu Qianqiu was expelled from Fuxin Island. After the 4 clan heads had a discussion, they issued a secret order to the disciples of the 4 major clans to search for Yu Qianqiu in secret. Once they found him, they were to protect him at all costs until he returned to the 4 major clans. Once this news was out, the evil Dao was the happiest. The righteous sects actually had such an unconventional traitor. Moreover, he was a traitor of Fuxin Island. Moreover, he was such a famous traitor. If he could join the evil Dao, it would be a huge blow to the reputation of the righteous sections. Why wouldn't they do it? As a result, the entire evil Dao alliance began to operate rapidly. All the evil Dao sects had a common understanding that they would protect Yu Qianqiu at all costs when necessary. If any of the sects suffered any losses because of this matter, all the sects would compensate them together. In short, they must not let the righteous sects succeed. 10,000 demons Qiu Weiyuan clamored in high spirits as he personally commanded this leap operation. In an instant, both the righteous and the evil Dao took action. Yu Qianqiu had completely disrupted the entire cultivation world. No one knew if the righteous sects would succeed or if the evil Dao would be rampant. In the bustling streets of the Huaxia Empire, Yu Qianqiu was wearing black clothes and a small hat. He was dressed like a servant and was completely unaware of everything that happened in the cultivation world because of him. He was leisurely strolling behind Shi Xiaotian. When he saw the people in carriages passing by and people looking at him with strange eyes, Yu Qianqiu immediately restrained himself. Not to mention anything else, the fact that he was misunderstood by Bao Wanshi at the general's mansion meant that he was not good enough at acting as a servant. Thus he found a passerby as a comparison. He put down his hands behind his back and straightened his chest. He followed behind Shi Xiaotian with a dejected look. "Boss." Shi Xiaotian turned around and was stunned. Why did his boss look like a thief? He said in a daze, "Are we really going to Wanhua Lu?" *CK. Have you ever seen a young master call a servant boss? Please act more properly and call me Little Qian. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Little Qian, are we really going to Wanhua Lu? Shi Xiaotian said a little unnaturally. Young master, if you say so, we will go. Yu Qianqiu put on a servant's smile and thought, Wanhua Lu is so famous in the capital. I wonder what the difference is between the brothels of the ancient times and the ones in my previous life. I wasn't in the mood before, but now that I'm interested, I'll be letting myself down if I don't take a look. When did I say I wanted to go? It seems like you're the one who said you wanted to go. Shi Xiaotian was speechless. He originally wanted to get a carriage, but he didn't know why Yu Qianqiu rejected it and insisted on walking. Wanhua Lu should be considered as the #1 brothel in the Huaxia Empire. There were branches in all the bigger cities in the empire. To be able to obtain the title of Wanhua and make so many men flock to it like ducks and spend money like water, it definitely had its own unique points. Yu Qianqiu came because of this point. This was the #1 brothel in the world. Compared to the #1 brothel in the world, Fujian Island, it seemed like more people knew about the former than the latter. The night was about to turn dark. On a small street that wasn't the main street, the moment one entered the street, one could smell the fragrance of pink powder. This small street was abnormally bustling with people walking to and fro, rubbing shoulders with each other. It was a street where one could eat, drink and be merry. This was all thanks to the #1 brothel in the world, Wanhualu. When the two walked in, Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in admiration that this was a first-rate place to spend money. Shi Xiaoyan's face also became lively. Suddenly, there was a crowd of people rushing towards the largest building in the middle of the street. That building was decorated with colorful makeup, and it was even more beautiful than a bride's. The fragrance of pink powder was coming from that building. Needless to say, this was definitely Wanhualu. The two of them were swept by the crowd. Shi Xiaotian turned his head and looked at the crowded carriages on the street. He was secretly glad that he didn't take a carriage. Yu Qianqiu patted the shoulder of a person beside him and asked, "Brother, why is it so lively here? Is Wanhualu like this every day?" That person was trying his best to squeeze forward. Hearing this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise and said, "One look and I know it's your first time here. Today is the day that the #1 courtesan of Wanhualu will appear. Normally you won't be able to see it. It only happens once a month. If you're lucky you might be able to see it." After saying this, he ignored him and continued to squeeze forward. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan? How beautiful would she be? Yu Qianqiu was instantly interested. He secretly circulated his true essence, trying to push through the crowd. At this moment, a shout came from the street, "All of you get out of my way." The crowd turned around and saw an officer riding a large horse leading a large group of soldiers. They began to part the crowd and cut in. The commoners didn't dare to block their way, and the crowd began to squeeze to the sides again. The entrance of the 10,000 flower house was immediately surrounded by a group of soldiers wielding shining long sabers. Although there were soldiers guarding the entrance, the carriages on the street still couldn't enter. Hence, there were more soldiers protecting a group of people who got off the carriages and walked towards Wanhualu. Looking at the clothes of these people, they were probably nobles. Seeing these people easily pass through the crowd with their heads held high, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to throw a few bricks at them, but after thinking about it, he held back. The two of them squeezed into the crowd and waited for more than 2 hours. After the soldiers had probably escorted hundreds of nobles in, they finally retreated and guarded the entrance of Wanhualu, not letting random people in. Then, a few rich people who were escorted by their servants were allowed in after negotiating with the tortoise bus at the entrance. As for the people squeezing on the street, they were basically commoners or people who weren't rich or powerful, so they were naturally prevented from entering. They could only watch from the outside. Damn it. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan. This daddy here hangs out with the third young master of the National Pillar General's estate, who holds great military power, but I can't even enter a brothel. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He glared at Shi Xiaodan, who was shaking his head and smiling bitterly. He was very unhappy. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. He raised his hand and shouted, "The third young master of the National Pillar General's estate has arrived." Chapter 220. His voice was loud and clear. The moment the name Pillar of the State General was announced, it immediately produced a miraculous effect. The clamoring crowd immediately quietened down. Shwa. Everyone turned their heads to look in one direction. Becoming the center of attention, Shi Xiaotian was momentarily stunned. He never expected Yu Qianqiu to make such a move. At the entrance of the 1,000-flower brothel, the military officer holding the saber by his waist looked over in shock. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed as a house servant, was naturally unable to attract his attention. Seeing Shi Xiaotian in his luxurious robes, he was a little shocked. As the third young master of the Pillar of the State General's residence, although Shi Xiaotian rarely appeared in public, he had still seen him on a few occasions. As a soldier, the Pillar of the State General who had been fighting at the western borders for many years was undoubtedly the idol of the entire Huaxia Empire. He also had a very high prestige among the citizens of the empire. Especially last year when the general's 2 million soldiers split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries, forcing the 6 countries to sign an armistice, it pushed the reputation of the Pillar of the State General to the peak. In their hearts, the Pillar of the State General was the guardian of the Huaxia Empire. Out of the way. The military officer shouted excitedly. The citizens also had a look of surprise on their faces as they squeezed to the side, afraid to block Shi Xiaotian's path. The military officer waved his hand, and the soldiers guarding the thousand-flower brothel immediately split into two groups, rushing into the path that the citizens had vacated. They lined up neatly on both sides of the path. The military officer strode towards Shi Xiaotian and waved his hand to open his cloak. Holding the saber in his hand, he knelt down on one knee and said in a clear voice, "This general is the City Guard Patrol Commander Yuan Fei. Greetings, third young master." Greetings, third young master. The 2 rows of guards and the guards of the thousand-flower brothel all knelt down in unison. It was unknown which citizen knelt down first, but the citizens of the entire street all knelt down with difficulty. Because it was simply too crowded, they all shouted, "This humble citizen greets third young master. This humble citizen greets third young master." Their shouts rang out one after another, and it was clear that they were all heartfelt respect. Shi Xiaotian was a little embarrassed. Coming to a brothel in the name of the National Pillar General's residence was not something to be proud of. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the pillar of the State General to have such high prestige among the soldiers and citizens. He couldn't help but feel regret for his actions earlier. To have caused the citizens to love the pillar of the State General in such a manner. His conscience really couldn't be justified. After all, he was a soldier in his previous life. To be able to command such respect from the citizens, it was impossible to do so without experiencing 1,000 miles of bloodshed. Yu Qianqiu was truly ashamed to have tarnished the reputation of a general like this. The nobles and the rich who had entered the 10,000 flower house were also shocked by the continuous shouts outside. Third young master? Which family's third young master had come to cause such a big commotion? They sent their servants to the door to inquire. All the soldiers and civilians on the street knelt down. Only the 2 young men dressed as a master and a servant stood out, making the servants speechless. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but roll his eyes at Yu Qianqiu with a little complaint. The latter smiled awkwardly. Shi Xiaotian circulated his true yuan and said loudly, "My fellow citizens, please get up. I, Shi Xiaotian, am not worthy of such a big greeting." His voice surged through the entire street, drowning out everyone's greetings. The soldiers and commoners were shocked. What a loud voice! As expected of the son of the National Pillar General. Like father, like son. Everyone thanked him and said, "Thank you, third young master." They got up with difficulty. "Commander Yuan, please get up." Shi Xiaotian reached out to help Yuan Fei up. When the latter heard the former's loud voice and saw him coming to help him up, his competitive spirit was secretly aroused. He wanted to see if he had real skills or was just using his voice to scare people. Who knew that he didn't even have the strength to resist and was lifted up just like that. Yuan Fei couldn't help but be shocked. What great strength! His gaze swept past the sword hanging on Shi Xiaotian's waist. No wonder he was brought up in such a manner. Seeing their commander stand up, the soldiers also stood up. Yuan Fei waved his hand and said, "Third young master, please." "You're welcome." Shi Xiaotian cupped his hands and walked forward under Yuan Fei's lead. Yu Qianqiu followed behind dejectedly. Stepping into the myriad flower house, Yuan Fei stayed outside to continue guarding while the pimp led the master and servant in. The lanterns were lit and the myriad flower house was filled with guests. Alluring women were walking around with plates of fruits, wine and all kinds of delicacies. Hearing that the third young master of the National Pillar General's residence had arrived, the nobles who were already seated gathered downstairs to greet him. In terms of status and rank, there was no need to greet him. Many of the nobles had a higher rank than the National Pillar General. However, he was the one who held the strongest military power in the empire. He was someone who could make the entire Huaxia Empire tremble with a stomp of his foot. He was much stronger than those nobles who only had titles and name only. Shi Xiaotian gracefully greeted the crowd. One moment it was that little prince, the next moment it was this little prince. Shi Xiaotian handled the situation with ease. Yu Qianqiu nodded to himself. As expected of someone from the upper class. Today he had finally witnessed the power of the National Pillar General's residence. He had a new plan in mind. They were in an enclosure with a big performance stage in the middle. There were 2 levels of seats for spectators. The upper level was an open single room, while the lower level was a circle of single-table banquets. This should be the place where the courtesan Belle would sing and dance tonight to celebrate peace and prosperity. Shi Xiaotian arrived late. The single room upstairs had already been occupied. However, there was no need to worry. Naturally, there were people who knew their place and left one for him. The two of them were in a single room on the second floor, one sitting and one standing. The one standing behind Shi Xiaotian was of course Yu Qianqiu. A servant couldn't possibly sit with his master in public, could he? Wan Hualu had arranged for some prostitutes to come over. However, Yu Qianqiu felt that they were too unattractive. He found an excuse that the third young master didn't want to be disturbed and chased them out. He was used to seeing beauties in the cultivation world. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the so-called beauties here. If it wasn't for the fact that he still wanted to see the courtesan that everyone was fighting for, he might have turned around and left. Soon, the performance on the central stage began. For a moment, the sound of zither, flute, and drums rang out. More than a dozen graceful women danced gracefully, causing the crowd to cheer. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that they were going to do a striptease or something. Who knew that after wandering around for a long time, there wasn't anything interesting at all. One group after another went down, and another group changed into different styles. They didn't have the awareness of a brothel at all. He really didn't understand why those princes and nobles were cheering. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could throw a grenade down and let those women who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws quickly get off the stage. He wanted that courtesan to come up and take a look as soon as possible. If she didn't look good, then they should leave as soon as possible to avoid wasting time. This brothel was too boring. The music played by those musicians didn't have any passion at all. When it fell into his ears, it was like a lullaby. It made him sleepy and yawn repeatedly. After an unknown amount of time, just as he was in a semi-conscious state, the commotion around him woke him up. The lonely and light sound of the zither entered his ears, and it was quite refreshing. When he looked again, the surrounding princes and nobles were all leaning against the railings to watch. "The courtesan is coming out," Shi Xiaotian said softly. He also walked to the railings to watch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for the stars and the moon. Finally it was here. He also followed. In the depths of the lanterns, a figure dressed in a light gauze and thin red palace dress leisurely walked over. A long white jade hairpin was inserted into her jet black hair bun. The two ends of the hairpin were pulled up by a red veil that covered her face. Her pretty face was faintly discernible. It was hard to see clearly, but it was exceptionally alluring. Her white and tender lily-white hands were hugging a plain zither. One side of her ample chest was lightly pressed against it, making the other side even more abruptly perky. The red veil covered her perky buttocks, trying to cover her slender jade legs. However, the boundless spring scenery was always inadvertently revealed when her jade legs strode forward. The beauty dressed in red lightly walked onto the stage. She put down the jade zither on the table that had already been set up by someone. She nodded slightly to the surrounding people and then sat down peacefully. The red veil on both sides of her buttocks was quietly pulled open, revealing her white and tender thighs. "Good." Someone clapped and shouted. Immediately, it caused a loud commotion. Everyone agreed one after another. Yu Qianqiu finally became spirited. He clapped with all his might. Damn it. He finally saw someone who was pleasing to the eye. Although he couldn't see her face clearly just based on her figure alone, it was already top-notch. The single room for the two of them was in a good position. The courtesan happened to be facing the two of them so they could slowly admire her. 10 jade-like fingers pressed down on the strings of the zither, gently evoking a quiet and exquisite sound. The surroundings immediately quietened down. Yu Qianqiu nodded. At first he sounded a little sad, but it was still a little interesting. At least he was able to continue listening. The sound of the zither reverberated faintly. The face under the red veil suddenly sang softly, "I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness, ah." The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face instantly froze. Then it started to twitch. Chapter 221. It was a completely different tune from the Huaxia Empire, with a different style and singing style. However, it was undeniable that it was indeed pleasant to the ears. It was completely different from the current high-pitched tunes that were popular. It was simple and mellow yet moving. Even those ignorant and incompetent hedonistic sons could immediately understand the meaning behind it. Gradually, the image of a white fox trapped in love for 1,000 years appeared in everyone's mind. White fox. Shi Xiaotian's face was also filled with shock. How did this popular tune in the cultivation world spread to the myriad flower house in the secular world? Moreover, the person who composed this tune was right beside him. The two of them looked at each other, completely losing the mood to look at beauties. They looked at the Hua Kuei again. Although they couldn't be sure, They had a feeling that the other party was sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. This Hua Kuei was probably not simple. The surrounding nobles had previously been drooling over the Hua Kuei's beauty, but now they were completely immersed in the Hua Kuei's singing. Even after the song ended, they still couldn't extricate themselves. After a long time, their exclamations turned into cheers. They all felt that this trip was not in vain, so they rewarded the Hua Kuei with gold and silver ingots. However, the Hua Kuei seemed to be indifferent to the praises and rewards of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were no longer in the mood to stay. They turned around and were about to leave quietly. Suddenly, a coquettish voice transmitted into Yu Qianqiu's ears. I didn't expect that the abandoned disciple of Fuxian Island that the entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for would actually be involved with the pillar of the state generals. Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and suddenly turned to look at the Hua Kuei downstairs. Who else could it be if not her who was able to sing the White Fox? The other party could actually transmit a voice. It was clear that her cultivation was above the tribulation stage. No wonder he couldn't tell. Who was this person? Unfortunately, his cultivation was not at the stage where he could transmit a voice. He couldn't question her in public, could he? He could only reveal a stern and questioning gaze. Seeing his reaction, Shi Xiaotian also stopped. He didn't know what he was going to do. Yo. The third son of the National Pillar General was actually an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, Yu Qianqiu, you've really found a good hiding place. Yu Qianqiu heard Hua Kuei's laughter again. Don't look at me like that. You want to know who I am? Then let's meet at the top of the highest mountain in the western suburbs of the capital. Come quickly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the Cultivation Alliance won't find out about the relationship between you and the National Pillar General's residence, After Hua Kuei finished transmitting her voice, she picked up her zither and quietly walked away amidst the cries of pain from the crowd. She only left the crowd with a graceful and extremely alluring back view. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet, asking everywhere why the Oiran Queen left after just one song. No one could answer. Those who wanted to use force were also stopped by others. Since Myriad Flower Tower was able to establish itself in the Huaxia Empire, they naturally had a powerful background or strength to back them up. They weren't people they could afford to offend just because they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes as he watched Hua Kuei leave. He whispered into Shi Xiaotian's ear, I have something to attend to. I'll be heading out first. You play by yourself. With that he left quietly. Shi Xiaotian looked at the departing Hua Kuei, then at the departing Yu Qianqiu. He sat down thoughtfully. After leaving Myriad Flower Tower, Yu Qianqiu found an empty alley and released a flying sword out of thin air. He stepped on the sword and quickly flew towards the western suburbs. The people of the capital naturally couldn't see it in the dark. Even if they did see a stream of light, they would think it was a dazzling light. The highest mountain in the western suburbs was steep. It should be a place with few people. On the mountain, the chirping of insects could be heard. The silver moonlight covered the mountain peak. The rocks on the mountain peak were exposed and could be considered flat. As the mountain wind blew, a few old pine trees swayed under the moonlight. Yu Qianqiu landed on his sword. He flipped the sword in his hand and carefully looked around. Even if the other party was an expert at the end of the tribulation stage, he was confident that he could escape. It wasn't a big place. Under the moonlight, it was clear that the other party hadn't arrived yet. The terrain at the foot of the mountain was dangerous. In the depths of the forest it seemed a little eerie. Yu Qianqiu looked at the dim lights of the capital. He stood on the mountain peak and welcomed the mountain wind. He held his sword with both hands and quietly waited for the arrival of Myriad Flower Tower's Hua Kuei. Ding ding dong dong. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He suddenly turned around and his gaze fell on the few old pine trees. A woman wrapped in a red veil sat on the top of the tree and played the zither. Who else could it be other than that Hua Kuei? Damn it. Trying to scare me. Aren't you afraid of pricking your butt while wearing so little? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? How do you know me? Hua Kuei didn't answer. Instead, she played the zither and sang, Yesterday was like the flowing river in the east, far away from me. Today my heart is in chaos, how troublesome. Did you ask me to come here just to listen to you play and sing? Yu Qianqiu waved his sword and pointed at her. Hua Kuei was completely focused. It was as if she was deeply immersed in her own song. Only when the song was finished did she open her fingers and press on the zither to stop the lingering sound. She sighed and said, Yu Qianqiu, I heard that the song I played and sang today was composed by you? Crazy. Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. So what if I composed it? So what if I didn't? Nothing much. On the treetop, Hua Kuei's figure flashed, and under the moonlight he suddenly appeared beside Yu Qianqiu, leaving behind several afterimages. The latter was startled and he fiercely jumped back. Whoosh! Nearly 100 flying swords suddenly appeared, and they protected him from all directions. Hua Kuei, who was holding the zither, was startled. She didn't see how Yu Qianqiu could produce so many flying swords at once. She also didn't see him carrying a storage bag. She chuckled and said, "What are you nervous about? But you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill the sect master of Onquangsung. I'm a little curious. How could that half-baked Hao Wei teach a disciple like you? That's right, he might have learned it on supporting Immortal Island. But Hao Wei doesn't know how to play the zither or sing." "What do you mean by good, or bad?" "I don't know him." "Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here?" Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. "You don't know Hao Wei?" I get it. You should know the Hao Sansi of Onquangsung, right? Isn't he your master?" Hua Kuei laughed. "What does my master have to do with you?" Hua Kuei smiled and said, "I heard that you offended the sect master of Onquangsung because of your master's death. That's why you joined supporting Immortal Island." "Yes. You beat up the grandson of the sect master of Onquangsung in the Hundred Flowers Valley. Then you beat up the son of the Deluo sect master at Hatter Island. Then you killed Lu Chongqing and his grandson. It looks like you're still brooding over the death of your master, Hao Sansi. So, I didn't expect Hao Sansi to have taken in a good disciple. He's always thinking about avenging his master. It's only right for a disciple to avenge his master. There's no need for you to flatter him." "I find it strange. You didn't invite me here to have a heart-to-heart talk, did you?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. "Only right? Hao Sansi has finally done something right in this life, so his death isn't unjust." Hua Kuei giggled again, laughing so hard that his body trembled. Su Qin, who was in her arms, stood on the ground. She lifted an arm and removed the veil that was tied to her hairpin. Her charming face smiled at Yu Qianqiu. So familiar. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He searched his mind and suddenly remembered a person. He couldn't help but exclaim, "You're the 100 Charms Enchantress of the Demon Illusion Palace?" Chapter 222. Oh, little brother, you have a good memory. I didn't expect you to remember our first meeting. It's not in vain that I've been paying attention to you all these years. Ah. Allure Seductress spread her arms and swept her fingers over the strings of the zither. After a string of homophonic notes, she covered her mouth and laughed. Her breasts rippled, and the red muslin wrapped around her swayed with the mountain wind. The color of her lower body was faintly discernible. She was really charming when she smiled. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and thought, amazing. Among all the beauties he knew, he had never seen a woman like Allure Seductress. She had the charm of a mature woman to the extreme. No wonder she was called Allure Seductress. However, he didn't know whether she was a friend or a foe, so he couldn't be careless. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and said expressionlessly, "Why have you been paying attention to me?" Allure Seductress stopped laughing and shook her head. "Are you really confused or just pretending? Don't you know the relationship between me and your master?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. He had heard the conversation between her and Lu Wanwan in the Spirit Stone Mine. If Hao Wei was really his master, Hao Sansi, then the relationship between her and his master was ambiguous. He might even have to call her his master's wife. However, it seemed too ridiculous. How could a dirty old man like his master pick up such an arrogant girl? Besides, Allure Seductress was the master of the Enchanted Palace. Unless she was a pervert. Allure Seductress seemed to have seen through his mind. She didn't wait for his answer and told him a story of the past. At that time, Allure Seductress wasn't the master of the Enchanted Palace yet. When she went down the mountain to gain experience, she happened to meet Hao Wei, who was also going down the mountain to gain experience. At that time, he wasn't called Hao Sansi. One was righteous and the other evil, so they started to fight. However, Hao Wei was only in the early stage of core formation at that time, while Allure Seductress was in the middle stage of nascent soul. There was a huge gap between their cultivations. As a result, Allure Seductress was not only injured but also captured by Hao Wei. The Allure Temptress had always looked down on the hypocrisy of the righteous, so she teased Hao Wei by saying that she wouldn't kill him as long as he was willing to join her Phantom Palace. However, Hao Wei would rather die than submit. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call her Demoness. As a result, he had angered the Temptress of 100 Charms. Thus, she tormented him until he was on the verge of death. But even if he was on his last breath, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. He continued to curse and swear loudly. Allure's seductress was shocked. She didn't expect that there would be a man who wasn't afraid of death in this world. She had never seen a man like this before. Her attitude gradually changed from disdain to ridicule, then to anger, and then from shock to admiration. Such a man was indeed rare in the cultivation world, and it could be said that she was convinced. Then a dramatic change occurred. Allure's seductress beat Hao Wuwei to death, but in the end she was the one who healed him. Under her careful care, Hao Wuwei's mood also changed during the healing process. He didn't expect that this seemingly seductive and absurd woman had such a side to her. As a result, there was a problem. When a man and a woman spent a long time together, once they had a good impression of each other, it couldn't be stopped and the two of them developed feelings for each other. To be exact, the two of them fell in love. In the cultivation world, it was absolutely forbidden for righteous and evil to fall in love with each other, especially in the righteous. Hao Wuwei, who had recovered from his injuries, returned to Ong Kwangtsung uneasily. He didn't dare to mention this matter to his master. However, Allure's seductress was a woman who dared to love and hate. This might be the difference between evil and righteous. Allure's seductress couldn't bear the pain of lovesickness, so she secretly went to Ong Kwangtsung to find Hao Wuwei. As a result, Hao Wuwei was scared to death and advised her not to come to Ong Kwangtsung anymore. His words almost made Allure's seductress die of anger. "I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? A man who isn't even afraid of death is afraid of this?" She was so angry that she simply revealed her whereabouts in Ong Kwangtsung and quickly escaped. Her willfulness didn't cause any trouble for herself, but it caused Hao Wuwei to suffer. When the matter was exposed and he was reprimanded by the sect, Hao Wuwei honestly confessed what had happened and almost lost his life. If it weren't for the fact that his master happened to be the sect master of Ong Kwangtsung and wanted to protect him, there wouldn't be Hao Sansi in the future. In fact, back then the sect master of Ong Kwangtsung thought very highly of this disciple and even wanted to train him to be his successor. However, this matter was completely ruined. The sect master was heartbroken and reprimanded his disciple severely. He also changed his name to Hao Sansi, which meant that he should think twice before doing anything. In the end, he couldn't avoid the punishment and swore never to have any contact with Allure's seductress again. He even made a fuss and faced the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 10 years. After that, Allure's seductress was a little regretful, but she held on. In the end, the two of them really didn't see each other for decades. By coincidence, when the two of them met again, Allure's seductress couldn't believe her eyes. Hao Wuwei, who was upright and outspoken in the past, had actually become a sloppy old man. She found an opportunity to stop him alone and interrogate him. Chapter 223. What? You didn't expect this, right? The Allure beauty laughed like a silver bell. I sigh. With a thought, Yu Qinsho's flying swords disappeared, removing his defense. Scratching his head, he walked in front of the Allure beauty, smiled bitterly and bowed. "Disciple Yu Qinsho greets ma'am." For a moment he still found it hard to associate Hao Sansi, that old man, with this charming woman, but the two of them had an affair. He had to accept it even if he didn't want to. From the old man's previous signs, he still had this woman in his heart, otherwise he wouldn't have given up on himself to that extent. If he didn't accept it, his conscience wouldn't be at ease and the old man wouldn't die in peace. "Yo, that's a good boy." The Allure beauty obviously liked the word mom. With a charming smile, she walked closer and teasingly hooked his chin with her finger, and even put her arm around his shoulder. That pair of bouncy and plump breasts rubbed against his shoulder from time to time, causing Yu Qinsho to smile bitterly. Was this woman really as infatuated as she said? Sigh. What a stunner. Damn it. It was really irritating. Unfortunately, he wouldn't do that kind of thing even if he was beaten to death. Cough cough. Why did you go to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? Yu Qinsho changed the topic and took the opportunity to stand further away. He didn't want to cause a nosebleed in front of Ma'am. What do you mean I went to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? 10,000 Flower Brothel originally belonged to the Enchanted Palace. What's so strange about me, the palace master, being in my own territory? The Allure beauty laughed. What? Yu Qinsho was stunned. So Enchanted Palace also runs a brothel. That's not right. As far as I know, before Enchanted Palace fell, this 10,000 Flower Brothel already existed. You brat, your words are really unpleasant. The temptress rolled her eyes and sighed, "Forget it, you're quite pleasing to the eye. I'll tell you some secrets. Did you think that after An Kwang-sung razed the Phantom Palace to the ground, I would have no place to stay and could only hide in a brothel? Was that not the case?" Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. This cheap mistress had really gotten into character. The 100 Charms beauty rolled her eyes again and continued, "You should know the Pink Sect, which is ranked 10th in the Devil Dao and ranked 9th after my magical illusion palace fell, right? The Red-Pink Sect was known for its charm techniques. The 10,000 flower house in the secular world was opened by the Red-Pink Sect. Other than being the illusory demon palace's palace mistress, I'm also the sect master of the Pink Sect. You don't know this, right?" Ah. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. To be exact, he was confused by this complicated relationship. The 10,000 flower house originally belonged to the magical illusion palace, and now it was opened by the Pink Sect. After sorting out his thoughts, he finally understood. He really didn't expect that this mistress had a double identity. She was actually in charge of two big sections. The 100 Charms beauty said disdainfully, "Outsiders thought that the magical illusion palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao, couldn't withstand the attack of the righteous Daos ranked 6th, An Kwang-sung, and collapsed just like that. But who knew that my magical illusion palace had diverted more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? It was really because of the sudden incident that we were caught unprepared by An Kwang-sung and suffered a big loss. Otherwise, with An Kwang-sung's strength, it wouldn't have been so easy to succeed." "I don't understand this." Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Why did your magical illusion palace divert more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? Wouldn't it be better to spend more effort to improve the magical illusion palace's strength? Otherwise, it wouldn't have suffered losses under An Kwang-sung's hands. Do you think it's easy for me, a woman, to sit in the position of magical illusion palace's palace master?" The 100 Charms beauty asked back and faintly let out a breath and said, "Since I, a woman, have taken the position, I naturally have to come up with means to convince my subordinates. For a long time, my magical illusion palace has always been ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. In the past, which sect master didn't want to improve their strength, and didn't want to take a step forward in the ranking? But if you send them up, the sects above them will inevitably come down. Let's not talk about the righteous Dao's reaction for now. Once you threaten the top-ranked sects, then your sect will inevitably be suppressed by the higher-ups, and it will be very difficult to take a step forward. So when I first took office, I began to quietly divert people to develop the Pink Sect. The effect is very obvious. Those top sects won't spend too much effort to pay attention to such a small sect. With the support of my magical illusion palace, the Pink Sect climbed to the 10th place in just a few years. With this credit, it also allowed me to sit firmly in the position of magical illusion palace master. Master's wife is really wise and powerful. This disciple admires you." After flattering her, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Master's wife told me such a big secret. Aren't you afraid that this disciple will leak it?" "Leak my secret?" The 100 Charms beauty looked him up and down, looking at him like she was looking at a stupid pig, and sneered, "You should worry about yourself. The Deluo sect wants to get rid of you as soon as possible. An Kwang-sung has even put up a bounty for your capture. The entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for you everywhere, and the Devil Dao is also looking for you everywhere. Unless you continue to hide in the National Pillar General's office and continue to be a servant, don't show your face in the cultivation world. Once your whereabouts are exposed, you should be prepared to be killed by the righteous Dao or join the Devil Dao." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He naturally didn't know about this and couldn't help but smile and said, "Master's wife, are you trying to scare me? I'm just a core formation realm disciple. How could I cause such a big commotion between the righteous and Devil Dao?" The 100 Charms beauty casually plucked the strings of the zither beside her and leisurely said, "The person who provides Yu Qianqiu's whereabouts will be rewarded with 1 million high-grade spirit stones. The person who takes Yu Qianqiu's head will be rewarded with 5 million high-grade spirit stones. And the person who captures Yu Qianqiu alive will be rewarded with 10 million high-grade spirit stones. If you don't believe me, go to the capital and shout, 'I am Yu Qianqiu,' then you will know whether I'm telling the truth or not." Yu Qianqiu looked towards the direction of the dimly lit capital, and his face twitched. He didn't have the guts to try. In fact, he didn't even need to try to know that he killed sect master An Kwang-sung, so the other party definitely wouldn't let him go easily. It's fine to be a coward once in a while, but it's not in my character to be a coward all the time. As the saying goes, the first to strike gains the upper hand, and the last to strike suffers a calamity. Since both the righteous and Devil Dao are after me, then come. Who's afraid of who? If worst comes to worst, I'll just go back to Utopia and farm. Besides, I haven't fully used my troops yet. A bunch of dogs, do they really think I'm easy to step on? Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and lightly snorted, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. The 100 Charms beauty had been sizing him up with a smile. Mistress, you didn't call me here just to tell me this, did you? Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked. Of course not. The 100 Charms beauty smiled and said, I also didn't expect to meet you today. I'm telling you this because I know you want to avenge your master, and I also want to avenge your master. That's why I'm telling you this, and Yu Qianqiu asked with an inquisitive look in his eyes. The 100 Charms beauty deliberately paused, then chuckled and said, and I also know that you definitely have someone helping you. I heard that when you killed Lu Changqing in Swallow City, you brought hundreds of men in black, and there seemed to be experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for you to kill Lu Changqing with your ability. So, back then, when I was at the Spirit Stone mine in Ongquangsung, I planted a strand of divine sense on you. Who knew that it would be dispelled in the blink of an eye? It seems that your background isn't simple. Chapter 224. So she was talking about this. It seemed like there were quite a few sects that knew about this. Yu Qianqiu praised disapprovingly, Master's wife is really well informed. You even know about this. When it comes to being well informed, I'm afraid there's no sect in the entire cultivation world that can compare to my pink sect. You must know that the purpose of my pink sect opening 10,000 flower houses in various places is to facilitate the investigation and transmission of information. Just like the trouble you've caused in Swallow City, I'll know within an hour, the 100 Charm beauty said proudly. Yu Qianqiu was slightly taken aback. The myriad flower brothel had opened almost everywhere in the Huaxia Empire. Thinking about it carefully, the net-like myriad flower brothel was indeed very useful for gathering information. But how much manpower and money did it take? Gathering information in the cultivation world was not something that ordinary people could do. No wonder the enchanted palace was taken down by Ongquangsung. It turned out that it had been emptied long ago. But why did she say this to me? With a thought, Yu Qianqiu asked doubtfully, Master's wife, could it be that you want us to join forces and avenge Master together? Smart. 100 Charm beauty smiled and said, I also want to see what kind of people are behind you. Why can't I find anything with my information channels? As he spoke, he leaned over with his body fragrance as if he had no bones. Yu Qianqiu was really afraid of her. She would come over and touch him at the slightest provocation. It was true that he wanted to take advantage of her, but he couldn't do anything serious. So he didn't know who was taking advantage of who. He could only pretend to think of something and quietly took a step away. He frowned and said, I do have some people behind me, but I'm afraid it won't be easy for Master's wife to meet them. What? Master's wife, I told you so many secrets. Are you still going to keep them from me? 100 Charm beauty crossed her arms and smiled. Naturally, it became an attractive scenery. Master's wife, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly, Master's wife wants to meet them. Unless you are willing to give them all your strength, they won't meet you. This time, 100 Charm beauty couldn't laugh anymore. Give them all my strength? Wasn't this a joke? She stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes and frowned. Yu Qianqiu, tell me honestly, are you being controlled by the person behind you? Let me tell you, even if your master was still alive, he wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself to avenge him. What was this cheap master's wife thinking? Who was controlling who? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned, and then he felt a little touched. It seemed that she really had deep feelings for his master, Hao Sansi. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so concerned about him. He shook his head and said, Master's wife, you are mistaken. I'm not controlled by them. I'm just very good friends with them. Seeing that he was unwilling to speak, the Allure beauty didn't force him. She sighed and said, It's not that I don't want to let go of the authority in my hands, but the human heart is unpredictable. Before I take revenge for your master, it's impossible for me to hand over the power in my hands to others. Actually, I've been tired of this kind of life for a long time. I can't compare to you men. No matter how high my cultivation is, I'm still a woman. I don't want to live forever either. Her tone was full of helplessness. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. He actually wanted to take control of the Allure beauty's power, but after hearing her words he could only give up on that idea. The moon was enchanting and the night breeze was refreshing. The two fell into a short silence. Master's wife, Can you find the locations of all the spirit stone mines in the Luo sect in Ong Kwangsung? Yuchencho suddenly asked. What do you want? The allure beauty suddenly turned around and asked. Hee hee. Yuchencho sneered and said, since you dare to have designs on me, you have to pay a price. Didn't you attack one of Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mines in the past? This time I want to learn from Master's wife. The allure beauty frowned slightly and said, you want the locations of all the spirit stone mines in both sects? What? Is it very difficult? Yuchencho asked. The allure beauty shook her head and said, the information on the spirit stone mines of all the major sects is readily available. I can give it to you anytime you want. However, since I caused a ruckus in the past, all the sects have strengthened their defenses around the spirit stone mines. If you have designs on so many places at once, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous. Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Yuchencho was once again moved. He smiled and said, don't worry, Master's wife, I am very afraid of death. I will not joke around with my life. I have my own plans for the specific operation. The allure beauty nodded and said, all right, I will organize it for you tonight. If you want, you can come to 10,000 Flower House to find me. Then disciple will thank Master's wife in advance. Yuchencho saluted, then looked at the sky and said, disciple still has something to do, so I will take my leave first. Finished speaking, he summoned a flying sword and was about to leave. However, the allure beauty laughed and said, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Are you afraid that I will eat you? Damn. She was just being serious for a while. Why is she here again? Yuchencho looked around. This really was a good place to do dirty things. There was no need to be afraid of people disturbing him. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, could it be that Master's wife wants disciple to accompany you to see the scenery? Not today. Next time I will find a chance to let you accompany me to see the scenery. The allure beauty giggled non-stop, walked closer and said, you are leaving just like this? Are you not going to give Master's wife a gift? Master's wife, whatever you want, just say it. As long as it is within my means, I will give it to you, Yuchencho said helplessly. Meeting this kind of Master's wife, there was really nothing he could do. He was really afraid that she would ask him to marry her, so should he refuse? The allure beauty didn't answer for a long time. Instead, she leisurely paced around a few times. The moonlight vividly showed off the curves under her thin veil. Yuchencho took a breath and looked to the side. I heard that the 2 songs circulating in the cultivation world were composed by you. Why don't you compose a song for Master's wife as a gift? This won't force you, right? The allure beauty finally said the gift she wanted for their first meeting. Since Master's wife has asked, how can disciple dare to disobey? Master's wife, please wait a moment, let me think about it. After finishing speaking, Yuchencho also let out a sigh of relief. So this is what you want, I will just casually pirate a song for you. Seeing him slowly pondering, the allure beauty's eyes lit up. It should be known that Yuchencho's 2 songs had spread throughout the cultivation world. Everyone would regard them as classics, especially women who especially liked them. However, there were not many people who knew that it was composed by this Yuchencho in front of her. Unexpectedly, as soon as she asked, he actually agreed. Seeing him in deep thought, the allure beauty thought that he was racking his brains to come up with ideas in his mind. However, she didn't know which song he was thinking about. Of course, the song couldn't be too avant-garde. It definitely wouldn't work if he came up with something like, hum, haha, use nunchakus. It must be something that ancient people could understand and suitable for her. After a long time, she saw him nodding as if he had understood something. He walked to the allure beauty's zither, grabbed it, walked to a rock on the cliff, sat cross-legged, put the zither on his knees and slightly adjusted his mood. Then he said indifferently, Master's wife, this song is for you on behalf of Master. The allure beauty was stunned. Just when she was about to say something, she heard the sound of the zither, so she had to calm down and listen. As her thoughts sank along with the prelude, Hao Wuwei's appearance in the past appeared in front of her eyes, as if he wanted to tell her something. At this time, Yuchencho had already started to sing along with the sound of the zither. Don't mention the past again. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if the memory can't be erased, love and hate are still in the heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, you don't have to painstakingly ask for my news. Love is a difficult problem, dazzling and confusing. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's too difficult to forget you. You never really left, you are always in my heart, I still love you, I can't do anything about myself. Because I still have a dream, I still have you in my heart, I'm always easily moved by the past, I always feel heartache for you. Don't be reluctant to stay in the years, I have thousands of unintentional tenderness, don't ask me if we will meet again, don't care if my words are insincere. Why don't you understand, as long as there is love, there will be pain, one day you will know life will not be different without me, life is already too fast, I'm so afraid, always with tears in my eyes, forget me, there will be no pain, leave the past in the wind. The moonlight was like silver, the mountain wind was blowing, Yuchencho sat on the edge of the cliff and sang with all his heart. At this time, the temptress was no longer as seductive as before, her eyes were already full of tears, she looked like she was scared out of her wits, as if she was talking to someone, her mouth muttered, "Don't mention the past. I really have to cut the past. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's not easy to forget you. You are always in my heart. As long as there is love, there will be pain. Forget me, there will be no pain, leave the past in the wind." "Wei, are you talking to me?" After playing and singing a few times, Yuchencho let out a breath, stood up and turned around, seeing the heartbroken look of the temptress, he was suddenly stunned, he couldn't help but shake his head. "Another infatuated woman, I hope this song is helpful to you, it can make you think better." He walked over and handed over the zither in his hand, softly said, "Master's wife." The temptress wiped away her tears, took the zither and said with a trembling voice, "Yuchencho, what is the name of this song?" Seeing her like that, Yuchencho really couldn't bear to tell her the name of the song, but he couldn't think of a better name at the moment, so he could only bite the bullet and said, "The name of the song is When Love is Past. Master's wife, disciple will take his leave first." After saying that, he flew away from the crime scene on his sword. Under the moonlight, on the peak of the mountain, there were a few old pines, the night wind was blowing gently, a woman wrapped in red silk was holding the zither, muttering, "When love is past. When love is past." Chapter 225. In the myriad fragrance garden of Fushien Island, Ferdinand had been suffering. The father-daughter relationship that had improved with great difficulty had now plummeted back to its original state. Furong once again regarded her father as a stranger. She even avoided him everywhere and didn't want to see him. The cause of the matter was naturally that Yuchencho, who was expelled from Fushien Island. Ferdinand was also a shrewd person. He naturally saw that his daughter had already lost her chastity to that bastard. However, it was useless even if he was unhappy. Who asked his daughter to like him? He could only wander around the sect every day hoping to get more news about that brat. Furong didn't have the mood to cultivate these few days. She lay on the bed in the room all day, staring at a purple gold necklace in a daze. This was refined by Yuchencho for her. There was a small transparent crystal ball hanging on the purple necklace. There was a little red in the small ball, which was very beautiful. Yuchencho once told her that the red inside was a drop of his blood. She didn't know how it was put in. "You don't want me anymore? You're going to abandon me?" Furong looked at the necklace in her hand and muttered to herself. Her tears wet the pillow again. She didn't know how many times she had repeated this sentence these few days. "Who doesn't want you anymore?" A familiar voice suddenly appeared in the room. Furong turned her head to look. Yuchencho, who was dressed in black and wearing a crooked hat, was looking at her and laughing. Furong sat up abruptly and rubbed her eyes a few times. She thought she had seen wrongly. Yuchencho laughed and said, "What? You don't even recognize me, your husband?" "Yuchencho." Furong's eyes lit up. She immediately ran down from the bed barefooted and directly jumped onto Yuchencho. She hugged him tightly and didn't let go. She buried her head and cried non-stop. Yuchencho hugged her but with both hands and touched it. He sked and said, "Why are you full of bones? Have you not eaten for a long time? It's not as comfortable as before." Hearing this, Furong immediately stopped crying and got down from his body. Using her hand to feel his body, she frowned and said, "I seem to have lost some weight. Don't you like it?" Sigh. Yuchencho let out a long sigh and carried her to the bed. He crouched down, grabbed her feet that were dirty from stepping on the ground, and carefully patted them clean. He picked up the shoes under the bed and helped her put them on while saying, "My family's Furong is pretty, but if you're as thin as firewood then you're not pretty. In the future remember to eat more. Don't think that you can stop eating just because you've reached the core formation realm. Have you seen those old guys on Fushien Island who often don't eat? Let's not talk about being old, dry and skinny. Do you think you'll look good like that? I don't like it anyway." Furong thought about what he said, and a withered old face appeared in her mind. She also became like that. Furong shuddered at the thought of it. She hurriedly nodded and said, "Then I'll eat more in the future. You can take me away too." Yu Qianzhou's face twitched a little. It wasn't hard to take her away. The key was that there was already a Chu Ping-er in Utopia, so there was no problem with Bai Suzhen. He just didn't know how Chu Ping-er and Furong would react when they met. It was better not to let them meet for the time being. After thinking it through, his expression suddenly became serious. He sat side by side with her and said, "Furong, I want you to do me a favor." Furong, who was previously crying, now seemed to have become a different person with Yu Qianzhou by her side. She nodded excitedly and said, "What do you want me to help with? Do you need spiritual herb seeds? I'll ask my father for it. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll help you steal it." In her impression, every time he asked her for help, it was nothing more than getting spiritual herb seeds. Yu Qianzhou's face twitched again. "With your level you can steal things from Myriad Fragrance Garden? Wasn't it because that old fellow Ferdinand turned a blind eye to it?" He coughed and said cautiously, "I don't want you to help me with this. I want you to stay in supporting Xian Island and help me be a spy." "What is a spy?" Furong's eyes widened in surprise. Yu Qianzhou acted as if he was serious and whispered in her ear. After Furong heard it, her expression also became serious. She nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll write down all the news from supporting Xian Island. I'll tell you when you come." "Okay. Then I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll leave first." Yu Qianzhou stood up and said, "Wait." Furong hugged him and said shyly, "Don't you miss me?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned, but he immediately understood. This girl used to be afraid, but now she's tasting it again. He looked around and chuckled, "So it's here? It's not convenient. It won't be good if someone hears us." Furong bit her lip and said with a red face, "We'll be fine as long as we don't make a sound." "Is that so?" Yu Qianzhou nodded his head. Then he put his mouth next to her ear and said with a sinister smile, "Then let's try it?" His words were polite, but in fact his hands were already helping Furong undress. As soon as Yu Qianzhou returned to Utopia, he went straight to Guan Yu's room in the military camp. He took the black clothes from Guan Yu and asked while changing, "How's the new battle plan going?" "No problem," Guan Yu said in a reporting tone. "According to your request, they've been trained to the high standard of ending battles quickly. Chen Feng has also provided enough qi recovery pills according to your request, and they've been distributed to everyone in the army. Each person has 2 storage bags with the capacity of 3 rooms." "Very good." Yu Qianzhou nodded and said, "Have you made arrangements for the 100 people I got last time?" "They've already started cultivating. The basic cultivation techniques are mainly based on the supporting Immortal Islands techniques. Chen Feng has already distributed the newly refined qi storage pills, which will allow them to enter the qi refinement stage as soon as possible. The women under Sister Bai are also planting a large number of spiritual herbs for refining foundation pills. Chen Feng has also started refining foundation pills. I believe that when they reach the 10th level of the qi refinement stage, all of them will be able to break through to the foundation building stage in one go," Guan Yu reported. Yu Qianzhou thought for a moment and said, "Those who are too old after breaking through to the foundation building stage, let them open up wastelands and farm. After all, they're old and it's too late to start cultivating now. Even if they continue to cultivate, there won't be any big breakthroughs. Let them live a few more years. Fighting and killing things aren't suitable for them. It just so happens that we can solve the increasingly tight food supply situation here. Let's try our best to be self-sufficient. That way we won't have to always go out to buy food. If there's a chance, I'll get more people here." "Got it." Guan Yu nodded. Yu Qianzhou's hand that was changing paused and he said in a deep voice, "For this battle, you have to be mentally prepared. I'm afraid that some casualties are unavoidable." "I understand. It's impossible to not die in a battle." Guan Yu's tone was a little heavy. After changing into a set of black clothes, the two of them walked together to the military camp's war room. Inside there was a long table. The company and platoon leaders of each company had been waiting for a long time. When they saw the two of them enter, someone shouted, "Stand up!" All of them stood up with a swish and performed the standard military salute taught by Yu Qianzhou. They said in unison, "Chief." Chapter 226. Yu Qianzhou raised his hand and saluted back, saying, "Everyone please sit." With that said, he walked to the end of the long table and sat down. Guan Yu walked to where Yu Qianzhou was supposed to sit. The two of them were facing each other, so their heads had been turned. Originally, Guan Yu was unwilling. Logically speaking, his current position should be the place where the leader of the team was qualified to sit. However, Yu Qianqiu refused because he had not been here for a long time. Guan Yu was the actual person in charge of the daily training and management here. He had to help Guan Yu establish his prestige because Guan Yu, as the chief instructor, had the lowest cultivation level in this group. Although he was working hard to catch up, it was enough for Yu Qianqiu to firmly grasp this point. It was enough for him to be the spiritual leader of this team. The platoon leaders began to report their respective training situation to Guan Yu. Like an outsider, Yu Qianqiu listened attentively and took advantage of this free time to size up everyone. He was quite satisfied with the results. There was no longer the old-fashioned cultivator expression on everyone's faces. Instead, everyone was in high spirits, looking a bit like soldiers. After listening to the reports, Guan Yu began to announce the operation plan to everyone. It was not easy to come by this plan. Some time ago, Yu Qianqiu had obtained the locations of the various sects' spirit stone mines from the Allure Beauty. He had picked the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung's mines to study. Only then did he realize that the Allure Beauty had prepared a lot of detailed information for him. The guards of each spirit stone mine, as well as their daily routine, were clearly marked. Yu Qianqiu followed the map and personally investigated each and every one of the spirit stone mines of the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung. He did so in secret, not daring to reveal his whereabouts. Finally, he came up with this operation plan. There are 15 spirit stone mines in Daluo sect and 6 in Ong Kwangsung. Our goal this time is to loot all 21 of them. After Guan Yu revealed his objective, he distributed the Jade Archives to everyone and said, "The Jade Archives in your hands contain detailed information about the various spirit stone mines." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They hadn't expected the battle plan to be so huge. They had to attack 21 spirit stone mines in one go. Expressions of difficulty appeared on their faces. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting quietly at the back, suddenly laughed and said, "Everyone, don't hold back. If you have any opinions, feel free to voice them out. Our goal is naturally to better complete this mission." Someone immediately stood up and said, "Leader, I'm from the Exalted Sect, so I have some understanding of their spirit stone mines. Ever since the Phantom Palace attacked Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mines, the defenses of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines have been strengthened. Every spirit stone mine now has an early-stage tribulation passing elder overseeing it. Although our 3 companies have the advantage in numbers and strength, we don't have anyone who can fight against a tribulation passing cultivator. I'm afraid that even if we manage to take down one mine, we will still suffer heavy casualties. Let's not talk about Ong Kwangsung. It's basically impossible for us to take down all 15 of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines one by one." When he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and gestured for him to sit down. Then he smiled and nodded at Guan Yu. "The leader has already taken your concerns into consideration and has made detailed arrangements to deal with them. Let me brief you all on the overall situation." Guan Yu glanced at the crowd and said in a loud voice, "Ong Kwangsung has 6 spirit stone mines. Each mine is guarded by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, 3 mid-stage nascent soul and 3 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, a total of 15 core formation cultivators, more than 50 foundation establishment cultivators, and 150 miners of varying cultivation levels. This kind of strength is a piece of cake for us. It won't be a problem to take them down one by one. As for the Exalted Sect's 15 spirit stone mines." At this point, Guan Yu's expression became serious. He stood up and continued, "Each mine is guarded by an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator. There are 10 nascent soul cultivators, nearly 50 core formation and foundation establishment cultivators, and nearly 200 miners. Most of them are at the foundation establishment stage. Most of them are at the qi condensation stage like Ong Kwangsung. If the Exalted Sect didn't send an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator to guard the mines, it wouldn't be a problem. In view of this, Leader has already set up an early tribulation transcendence cultivator in each of the 15 Daluo sect mines. As soon as we take action, the cultivator will help us tie down the enemy tribulation transcendence expert. And if something goes wrong, Leader will ask Misty Palace's Big Sister Bai to personally take action. I'm sure no one doubts Big Sister Bai's strength." Everyone exchanged glances and nodded. Naturally, this arrangement wouldn't be a problem. However, where did Leader find 15 tribulation-passing cultivators? Could it be that Leader has another force? At this time, someone stood up and asked, "Instructor, this is a good idea, but as long as we attack one of the spirit stone mines, the sects will be alerted. What if the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwangsung send a large number of experts? I believe that both the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwangsung are not people we can withstand. How are we going to attack the other spirit stone mines then? Yu Qianqiu sat at the back with a smile and didn't say anything. His subordinate's words were a little discouraging, but he didn't mind at all. This was exactly the atmosphere he needed. Only when everyone was involved would they be motivated to work together. Only then could they make up for the flaws in the battle plan. After all, he wasn't an immortal who could plan everything perfectly. Guan Yu raised his hand and gestured for the man to sit down. He said, "Company Commander First, leader has already considered your concerns. Therefore there is a very important task for your company to complete in this battle plan. Company Commander First, I want you to find a map of the mines in the Jade Archive. The location marked 1 on the map is the location of the communication array in each mine. Before we attack, you will first take out a platoon of soldiers and hand them over to Leader to command. Leader will lead them to completely destroy the communication array in the Spirit Stone mines. This is to prevent the news of the attack from leaking out. At the same time, all the troops will end the battle as quickly as possible. Do any of you have any questions?" Everyone shook their heads and sent their divine senses into the Jade Archives to examine them. Sure enough, there were maps of 21 Spirit Stone mines within. Upon closer inspection, they realized that their training during this period of time had been for the purpose of preparing to attack these Spirit Stone mines. The location marked 1 should be the location of the communication array in the mines. Guan Yu looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, "Since there are no more questions, the attack will proceed according to the latest training method. Dismissed and get ready?" "Yes." Everyone got up and quickly left the war room to make their own arrangements. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, "Yunchang, in an hour all combat troops will assemble and depart." An hour later, a hurried and loud bugle call rang out in the camp. A group of fully equipped men in black clothes and masks quickly rushed out of the barracks and assembled in 3 groups at the plaza. Guan Yu rode his tall horse and paced back and forth below the stage. Yu Qianqiu stood on the stage with his hands behind his back and looked down at the people below. At this moment, a ray of light descended from the entrance of the camp. Chu Ping-er had arrived with little Wu Chou. The two of them had been attracted by the bugle call. During this period of time, little Wu Chou had become attached to this beautiful sister-in-law of his. Every day she would bring him along to experience the feeling of flying on a sword. The little brat was having a great time. Just as the two of them were about to step into the camp, they were stunned by the formation inside. There were so many people standing together in a strange black color. They were lined up in a neat square formation, but it was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. A strong killing intent emanated from the camp, forcing the two of them to stay away from it. Little Wu Chou was startled by the aura. He hid behind his sister-in-law and peeked at his brother who was looking down at them from the stage. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the two people at the entrance. He raised an arm and opened his palm towards the crowd. After he covered everyone with his divine sense, he shouted in a deep voice, "Depart." In an instant all the people on and off the stage disappeared. There was no one left in the camp. Chu Ping-er and little Wu Chou didn't dare to go in. They held hands and left in silence. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.